In 1989, Houston private investigator Joe West launched an independent investigation to find the true killers of President John F. Kennedy. After 3 years of disappointments and dead ends, financed at his own considerable expense, West suddenly received a tip from an unexpected source, an FBI agent who asked to remain nameless. The tip led Joe West to Joliet State Penitentiary and a prisoner named James E. Files. Files, who was serving time for shooting an Illinois police officer, was at first reluctant to talk. Slowly and meticulously, West established a relationship with Files. Through months of personal visits and detailed correspondence, Files began to reveal his participation in the JFK assassination. Files was nearing a full confession when West became ill and passed away in 1993. It took 13 months after Joe West's death, but on March 22, 1994, associates of West's videotaped an interview with Files. In the interview, Files admits to being one of the shooters on November 22, 1963. He also implicates organized crime members Charles Nicoletti, Johnny Roselli, and Sam Giancana. For the next 2 frustrating years, attempts were made to bring the interview to the public, which finally led this confession to us. We now present this document to you in its unedited form exactly as it was taped. The breaks in the confessions occurred at the time of the taping. Nothing has been altered. We now leave the judgment of James E. Files and his confession in your hands.
We're ready? Please tell me your name.
My name is James Files, and I changed my name basically at the end of 1963 for purposes of, let me rephrase that. I took the name Files in 1963. My real name is James Sutton.
Say that again.
My real name is James Sutton, but I changed my name in late 1963 due to the fact that at that time I wished to get married and raise a family.
And what is your name now?
Today I'm incarcerated. I'm under the name James E. Files. I have raised a family under that name, James Files.
Did you change your names for any particular reason?
I changed my name for a particular reason because I have been working with a radical Cuban group, and excuse me, what we wanted to do at that time was to protect my identity so they wouldn't know who I really was when I got married because of my family life. I didn't want anyone to retaliate on the things that we were doing. And so I took on a different identity that was authorized to me through a government agency.
Were you ever in the armed services?
I was in the 82nd Airborne. I went in 1959, state of entry, January. And in July 10th of 1959, I believe it was July 10th, we shipped out to Laos. I was 82nd Airborne.
What were some of your duties?
My duties at that time, we were working a special operations group to work with the Laotian Army in Laos at that time. And I was there strictly as an advisor on training with small automatic weapons, setting detonators, explosives, mechanical ambushes. And it was just a handful of Americans there working with the Laotian militia at that time.
How long did you serve there?
I was there through approximately 14 months. I was in Laos before I came home.
You mentioned to me one time that you were in jeopardy of being court-martialed. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I really don't wish to elaborate on that part of the court-martial. It had to do in the field, but not of cowardice. It was something that I did that the whole face of the Laotian Army.
No problem. Could you tell me about how you first became involved in organized crime activities?
Well, I first became, it's a strange way to start out, but I was racing stock cars and driving at a local track, and Mr. Nicoletti had taken the shine to my driving, and he'd watched me on several occasions, and he had asked me once if I would like to drive for him one evening, and I took him out and test drove his car that we just picked up, a brand new Ford, and he was pretty well pleased with my driving, and from then on I became more like an assigned driver to him, and I did several drivings for him on different jobs that he did. An up-and-coming figure with organized crime, and he was known as one of the local hitmen. And as far as I'm concerned, he was the best there ever was, as far as I'm concerned.
What mafia family did he work for?
He was out of the Chicago family.
Who would have been the boss of the Chicago family?
At that time, Tony Accardo.
That's before Giancana or after Giancana?
Tony Accardo headed it up, and then Giancana came after that. Giancana at that time was one of the underlings. I guess you might say he was one of the top lieutenants at that point. Things were handed out in different branches in organized crime, such as someone might handle the liquor license, someone would handle the loan sharking and the booking, and someone else would handle contracts for murder for hire, anything like that.
James, where were you on November 22nd, 1963?
On November 22nd, 1963, I was in Dealey Plaza. I arrived at Dealey Plaza shortly before 10 a.m. that morning.
What was your reason for being there?
My reason for being there at that point was to look the area over, and I had driven a vehicle down there, and I had taken several weapons to Dallas, Texas.
For what purpose did you do this?
I did this for the sole purpose for the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
Who instructed you to do this, James? Tell me the story. Your own words.
The story started back, roughly 6 months prior to that, when Mr. Nicoletti contacted me one evening, and I had met with him, and he instructed me that we was going to do a friend of mine, and it was more like a personal joke because I had never liked John F. Kennedy since the Chandler's Bay affair, which is known as the Bay of Pigs.
Were you at the Bay of Pigs, Jim?
No, I was not at the Bay of Pigs, but I had helped train several of the operatives that were involved in the Bay of Pigs. But
when you say help train them, what do you mean?
I have trained them on what we call it Gator Ridge back then. Some people refer to it as No Name Key. Some people call it Assassin Ridge. It was in the Everglades down there in Florida. And we worked solely with the Cubans at that time. We'd supplied them with weapons. And the weapons had come basically from the government, from the CIA. They had been heavily involved in that. And at that time, David Atlee Phillips was my controller. And so I had never liked Kennedy since he had backed out on us and we didn't give him the firepower, and I felt that we'd been betrayed. But at that point, I had never even considered killing anybody at all over the situation. But when Charles Nicoletti told me that we were going to do my friend, I thought they were referring to a local party in town. And I said, why? I said, what the hell did he do? And he laughed. He says, no, not him. He says, we're going to do John F. Kennedy, the president. And I was a little bit shocked at first, but I said, hey, fine, great, it don't matter to me. And I was game for anything he wanted to do. And then we discussed it, and then he asked me what I thought about with Johnny Roselli working with us. And I told him, I said, hey, fine, I like Johnny, got no problems there.
So you knew John Roselli before that day?
I knew John Roselli before that day.
How did you meet him?
I had met John Roselli in Miami and discussed a few things with him, and I had met him through David Atlee Phillips. And David Atlee Phillips was operative for the CIA. And through time, everybody got to be fairly well good friends. But I grew up basically under Chuck's wing, Mr. Nicoletti's wing. And Chuck had told me we were going to do it. We had first originally planned to do the assassination in Chicago, but a lot of people didn't like that idea. So then it was moved to another location.
When you say we planned it, could you clarify we?
Well, when I say we, I was just with Mr. Nicoletti. Whatever he said do, I would do. And when I say we, I'm referring like the only thing I did was just drive the car, whatever that they needed me for. And Mr. Nicoletti had asked me then at that point when we decided not to do it in Chicago and was going to be moved to Dallas, when John F. Kennedy had decided to go to Dallas, a week in advance I took the 63 Chevrolet that we had at that time, and I left and I went down a week early. I picked up the weapons from the storage bin that we had and loaded them in the car with everything I thought that we might need with a various assortment. And I left and I drove to Dallas. I stayed out of the place at Mesquite, Texas. And once I got there, I called back and notified Mr. Nicoletti that I was there and on the scene. And the following day, Lee Harvey Oswald came by the motel where I was at, because they'd given him my location. And he took me out to a place somewhere southeast of Mesquite where I test-fired the weapons and calibrated the scopes on anything that might be needed. And then he was with me for a few days in town there. We drove around so I would know all the streets and not know running any dead-end streets if anything went wrong and we had to flee from the area.
So Lee Oswald spent time with you. He knew why you were there. You knew why he was there.
Lee Harvey Oswald knew that I was there, but I never told him why I was there. He would just come over and told us, stay with me and to help me out and assist me in any way that he could. Lee Harvey Oswald and I never discussed the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I discussed that with no one. Because my part of it, I had no part of the assassination at that time. All I did was go down, take the car down, take the weapons down, clean the weapons, calibrate the scopes, make sure everything was functioning properly, and then know the immediate area surrounding Dealey Plaza back to the expressways and the other local highways that could be used as an extraction point to leave Dallas in case something should go wrong. At that point, I had no involvement at all in the assassination outside of that, just doing my little job that I had to do.
Could you give me the exact chronology of what happened from the time you arrived in Dallas? You've already said that you went out and you test-fired some guns and things. Take me back to maybe November 21, the day before, and just in your own words, tell me what happened from November 21, 1963, till the night of November 22nd, 1963.
If we go back November 21st, I had everything pretty well set up on my end of it as far as knowing the area, knowing the streets, memorizing a lot of the major points there in the intersection, crossing railroad tracks and trestles and things. I had the weapons prepared and ready to go. I had those installed in the car where I wanted them. Everything had been calibrated. All ammunition had been set and ready to use. And I got a good night's sleep that night, and the following morning, I got up early, and I went to the Dallas Cabana Hotel to pick up John Roselli. And I'm going to say somewhere shortly around 7 o'clock that morning, maybe a few minutes past 7. And I picked up Johnny Roselli, and we drove from the Dallas Cabana to Fort Worth, Texas, to a pancake house they had there, just off the major highway. And we went there to meet someone. I did not know who we was meeting, but he had already told me, Johnny Roselli said we was going to meet a man by the name of Jack Ruby, that he had some things that we had to pick up. And when we got there, Johnny Roselli told me, he said, I'm going to go in and sit in the booth. He says, you wait and come in later. He said, sit somewhere else where you can keep an eye on me in case something goes wrong. I want you to cover my backside. So I positioned myself after Johnny Roselli went in, and I stood at the counter, ordered a cup of coffee, and sat there and waited. This one heavy-set gentleman came in, and he went over, and he knew Johnny Roselli, I assumed, that they shook hands. They talked for a minute and sat down in the booth together, and they passed over, I'm going to say probably by 9 envelope, vanilla envelope that has some material in it at that point. After a couple of minutes, he got up, they shook hands, he left. I went out into the parking lot, sure the air was clear, started the car up, pulled up by the door. Johnny Roselli come out and got in the car. I never met Jack Ruby, never said hello or anything. And Johnny Roselli got in the car with me, and we started back to Dallas. He opened the envelope up, and there was identification in there for Secret Service people, and we had a map in there of the exact motorcade route that would take it through Dealey Plaza. And Johnny Roselli said, well, they only made one change. And that was when he informed me that they was coming off of Main Street onto Elm, or onto Houston there. They made the zigzag, the little turn that they should have never made. But when they made that, that was the only change in it. I drove him back to the Dallas Cabana. He went upstairs, and I waited for Mr. Nicoletti to come down. Mr. Nicoletti came down and got in the car with me, and we drove to Dealey Plaza. And we got to Dealey Plaza shortly before 10 o'clock. And from there, we parked the car. It had been drizzling rain that morning. It's kind of a cool morning out. I parked the car beside the Dow Tech building. Mr. Nicoletti and I got out, and we walked up and down the complete area of Dealey Plaza. We covered every corner, walked by the buildings, looked over several different things. And we were just talking, having casual talk about one thing or another, the weather and everything. And at about 10:30, Mr. Nicoletti asked me how would I feel in supporting him and backing him up on this. And And he told me I wouldn't fire unless it became extremely necessary. And I told Mr. Nicoletti, I said, Jesus, I'd be honored to do anything to back you up. And he asked me, he says, where would you, he said, where it goes outside, if you was to be outside here, he said, where would you position yourself at in Dealey Plaza? And I told him, I said, well, I said, from looking everything over and from walking in the week that I've been down here, I said, I think I would choose up there behind the tree behind that stockade fence on the high ridge by the knoll up there. And he says, why there? I said, well, I've got the railroad yard and back up in there. We've got a parking lot there. I've got a place to where I could stash whatever I would need. I said, and I can pass off myself office of work in the railroad yard for the time being until that time comes. And nobody would really pay any attention to me. And he asked me then, he says, where do you think would be the best place for me? I said, well, I think the Dowtech building with the new change in it, I said, I think the Dowtech building over that building would give you the best advantage point there. And he said, I think so too. So we took a walk over, went through the parking lot over by the tracks, walked around through there, and he seemed pretty well pleased with that. And then at that point, it was about 11:10, he asked me what weapon would I choose to use over there. And I told him, I said, I would like to use the fireball. He says, why that one? He said, you've only got one shot. And I said, one shot's all I'm going to get anyway. If I wait until the last moment of firing, I may not fire. I said, and it's easy to conceal. I carry it in the briefcase, and nobody will pay any attention to him, and it's easier to walk away from there. And that's exactly what we did at that point. And shortly before noon, we went back to the vehicle. I took the briefcase out and turned my jacket inside out. I went back into the yard, to the railroad yard there. I secured the briefcase. And then I hung out back there, and I walked down on the grassy knoll. I looked things over. Nobody paid any attention. People were gathering. And shortly before the motorcade came, I went back up there and started securing myself in a better position so I'd be able to reach the attaché case, at that point, the briefcase. Excuse me. And I knew once that I opened the briefcase up and pulled the weapon out, nobody's going to be looking at me. The motorcade would be coming, making its first turn, and I wouldn't have to remove the fireball from the briefcase until approximately they made the turn on Elm Street there. And I would have plenty of time at that point. And at that point, when they started proceeding down Elm Street, shots started being fired from behind, and I assumed that it was Mr. Nicoletti, because he was the one who was in the building, and I knew that Johnny Roselli was there. And I remember the shots ringing out, and even though the president was being hit with the rounds, I was considering it a miss because I knew that we were going for a headshot on the president. And I had known he had been hit in the body, but I didn't know what part at that time. And I seen the body lurch, and I saw the body lurch again. I heard another shot that missed, and we were supposed to hit no one but Conley. I mean, no one but Mr. Kennedy. And I guess Governor Conley got hit with one of the rounds at that point. And I wasn't even sure of that because I was keeping Kennedy as best I could in the scope on the fireball. And when I got to the point where I thought it would be the last field of fire, I had zeroed in to the left side of the head there that I had, because if I waited any longer, then Jacqueline Kennedy would have been in the line of fire. And I had been instructed for nothing to happen to her. And at that moment, I figured this is my last chance for a shot, and he still had not been hit in the head. So as I fired that round, Mr. Nicoletti and I had fired approximately at the same time as the hit started forward, then it went backwards. And when I would have to say that his shell struck approximately 1,000th of a second ahead of mine, maybe, that's what started pushing the head forward, which caused me to miss in the left eye, and I came in on the left side of the temple. And at that point through the scope, I witnessed everything matter and skull being blown out to the back of the limousine, and everyone on television watching saw Jackie Kennedy crawl out there to get it. And I watched her hold on her hand to crawl back in the car, and I put the fireball back into the briefcase and closed it up, and I'd pull my jacket off, reverse my jacket, so I would have, instead of a plaid slide out, I would have the gray like a dress jacket, more or less. And I put a cap on my head, and I had to walk away with carrying a briefcase.
How did you exit the plaza?
When I exited the plaza, I walked to the edge of the stockade fence. I did not walk down the steps. I walked back over across the grass to the dead-end street that ends there by the parking lot. And I proceeded to, I believe that's Houston, cross Houston and went into the Dowtech parking lot. And when I got into the car, Mr. Nicoletti was already in the car, and so was Johnny Roselli. And I got in the car and drove away.
What happened to the shell casing that you fired at John Kennedy?
The shell casing that I fired at John Kennedy, when I took it out of the weapon, it's one of those moments when you feel like you're above everything else, and I guess I was a little bit cocky with it all. I took the casing, I put it in my mouth while I put another casing cartridge into that one. Before putting it into the case, and as I started to leave, I took the casing and I bit down on the casing to leave teeth marks on it, and then I set the casing as a symbol right on top of the stockade fence, which I know I should have never done, but I did that. And over the years, through other people, I have left certain trademarks along the way. But the casing was mine. It had teeth marks on it, and no one knew it was teeth marks here until recently in 1994. And they just had that examined to find out that it was teeth marks on there. But I left it more or less as a signature of my calling card.
Your trade?
You might say my trade.
How did John Rosselli and Charles Nicoletti get into the Daltex building?
That I could not say, but I would believe they went through the front door, and we had a side door that they would be exiting from, and I had parked this burgundy-colored Chevrolet there, the 63 that I was driving. I had parked that into the lot there. But when they entered the Daltex building, I was not there. I was beyond sight, back into the railroad yard at that point.
Are you sure they were in that Daltex building?
I'm positive, because I had the car parked there. They were going to come out through the doors and put their weapon. Well, Johnny Rosselli had no weapon. Charles Nicoletti was the one that carried the rifle in there, and that had been secured, and he put that back into the trunk of the vehicle, and I knew that was in the trunk because it was still there when I got the motel, took it out, because that was the plan, was for him to come back, put his in the trunk. I would have the briefcase, I would slide it under the steering wheel. Johnny Rosselli was sitting in the back seat. Charles Nicoletti was sitting in the right front passenger seat. I opened the door of the Chevrolet, got in, and drove out. As I come out of the parking lot, I made a right-hand turn onto Houston Street.
Where did you go after that?
After that, I don't remember just how many blocks I proceeded ahead, but I went, maybe 5, 6 blocks ahead to a major street. I took a left, went up a few more blocks by the expressway where there was an intersection there, an underpass. They had a gas station there. They had another car waiting there for them. They got out of the vehicle I was in. They walked across the parking lot. I never saw which way they went. I turned from there, made a right, and I headed back out to Mesquite. And I went back to the hotel, pulled into the parking lot, parked my vehicle there, secured it, went to the room that I already had rented, that I'd been in all week. At that point, I went in to strip myself, to shower. I used the hot wax to remove any resin from the skin pores. And when I finished with the details I had to do there, I waited until it was dusk, dark time. Then I went out and I removed all the gun cases that had been put back into the car, brought everything into the unit, cleaned those, secured everything. And later, as after midnight, where there was no activity, I went back out. I pulled the back seat in the car and I put the weapons back in behind the seat where they belonged, where we had a compartment for them. I went back in, went to sleep, waited till daylight. And then I drove from there back to southern part of Illinois, Old 66 there, and stayed overnight there. Then drove the rest of the way the next day into Chicago, because I had been instructed in the beginning, when I went to Texas, not to be driving at nighttime, not to be pulled over by any police officers, not to speed, and only travel during daylight hours. So there'd be no questions asked. And I had always been good at following orders. And I used the same procedure going home.
Let's stop for a second.
For these people here, in the beginning, I couldn't get nothing done. They were all down on me because a cop got shot. And my guitar was, okay.
Roll. How much money were you paid for your participation on November 22nd, 1963?
Well, the money that I received for that job in Dallas, I'd never asked for a specified amount. I'd never even asked for any money. I was just honored to do it with Mr. Nicoletti. But I had received $30,000 a short period thereafter. I remember there's 2-3 weeks went by, maybe a month even, before I met him one evening. He gave me an envelope, and I asked him, I said, what's this for? And he said, this is for down in Texas. He said, you did excellent. The only thing he did, he criticized me once. He asked me, he says, when I left Ely Plaza that day and got in the car with him, he says, don't you think you overreacted? And I says, what do you mean? He says, maybe you shot too fast. Because I know they didn't want a shot coming to front. They tried to put everything from the back side. And I told him at that point, I said, well, it's my last chance for the option. I said if I didn't fire at that point, I couldn't fire without endangering Jackie.
Jimmy and Joe West's notes and in Don Irving's interview notes with you, and in what you told me before, you told me you received $15,000.
$15,000.
You just said 30.
I just said 30.
How much did you receive?
All total, it was 30. I didn't want to say to you, I'm telling you the truth. I got 30,000 on the first part. I cut it in half from the beginning at 15 because there was an awful lot of money back then, and I didn't really think it mattered that much. And I didn't really plan to tell what money I got to it until I talked to Joe on that. But the total figure was 30.
Okay. I just want to clarify.
I'm clarifying everything now. We've been playing straight
That's
ball.
That's the only difference you've ever told me right there.
Well, in the beginning, I said 15 because I didn't think it mattered that much what the amount was. But since we've been playing square ball with everything else, and I've given you everything that I have, I'm not going to go back on that part. I'm just going to give you the actual figure, and that's what it was, and I never received no more, no less. The next money I received after that was for something else that we had done. But like I say, as far as I know, that's what the money I received was for Dallas when he gave me that envelope. Because I never took checks. He gave me cash, and I usually got money every other week from him just for local work around town.
When did you first meet Lee Harvey Oswald?
Excuse me. I first met Lee Harvey Oswald in, God, it was back in early '63. We were running weapons down to, I believe it was '63. We were running guns down there when I first met him, and I met him through David Atlee Phillips. And Lee Harvey Oswald and I had never been friends at that point or anything. We became more friends that we can Dallas together. But I had met him down there in New Orleans, and outside of New Orleans in a little town, I believe it was called Clinton down there. But I'd been taking down some semi-automatic 45 caliber perp guns. They were made, I believe, by Knoxville Arms at that time.
Am I to understand that Lee Harvey Oswald was working for the CIA?
Lee Harvey Oswald had the same controller that I had, David Atlee Phillips, because David Atlee Phillips introduced me to him.
And so that means that you have worked for the CIA also?
I had involvement with the CIA, yes.
Can you talk about any of that?
I don't wish to touch base with the CIA, and I think some of the people that you have dealt with, you recently found confirming proof of what I have told you through their knowledge and what they found out about the CIA. But I don't want to touch base or get back into CIA operations because it doesn't pertain to a lot of this other stuff.
Did the CIA have anything to do with what happened in Dallas in '63?
Excuse me. The CIA, someone in government organizations, had a heavy hand in it because they supplied Secret Service identification for different people. I don't know who used it, but I saw the identification that day and that morning of the assassination. But David Atlee Phillips had given me the Remington fireball at that time back then, but not specifically for Kennedy. He had given me that weapon, and it had been used prior to the assassination of John F. Kennedy when we had did some other work. And I had used it, I believe that was the third time for Kennedy. Would have been the third one, whether it was used a few times since then. But at that point, I know a lot of people that knew that Kennedy was going to be assassinated, but whether they had planned it or ordered it or not, I have no idea who ordered his assassination.
When you were in Dealey Plaza, did you see any other people there that you recognized that may have been involved with the mob or either with the CIA?
Yes, I did. I saw Frank Sturgis, and at one point I'm going to say he was probably no more than 40, 50 feet away. And again, later when I looked at him when I was farther from the yard, I was about 40 yards from him, maybe 35 yards away. And I scanned this crowd, I saw him, he was still there at the time of the assassination, and I was looking at him through a 3-power scope also. But I scanned the crowd to see if he was still there, and he was there.
Anyone else that you recognized? You told me at one time it looked like Old Home Week.
Excuse me, could we cut?
Sure. Did you see anybody else there you recognize?
Yes, they had Eugene Brading. He was there. James Braden, some people referred to him as, but I knew him as Eugene Braden.
Why was he there?
That I have no idea. I never talked to the man there, never discussed anything with the man. But I know that he had been there with Johnny Roselli and with Charles Nicoletti because he was at the Dallas Cabana that morning, and he had been out front talking to John Roselli. when I pulled up in the Chevrolet.
Why was Sturgis there?
I have no idea. I never discussed anything with Sturgis, but I knew him very well, and I know it was him.
Did you ever see Sturgis with Nicoletti or Roselli, or was he involved in planning in any way or anything?
As far as I know, Frank Sturgis had no involvement in the planning, and I had never saw him speak with Mr. Nicoletti or Johnny Roselli that morning, although Sturgis did know John Roselli, but they wasn't together that morning to my knowledge.
Did you know Lee Harvey Oswald was on that 6th floor, Jimmy?
No, I did not know he was on the 6th floor.
You got to say it. I did not know Lee Harvey.
I did not know that Lee Harvey Oswald was on the 6th floor at the book depository that morning. I wasn't even sure he was in the building or anywhere around because I had not seen Lee Harvey Oswald that day.
Did Nicoletti or Roselli ever tell you that Oswald was part of, quote-unquote, the hit?
Chuck told me that Lee Harvey Oswald was going to show me around the area down there, and that's why he had someone had got a hold of Lee Harvey Oswald and told him where I was at the Mesquite Hotel over there in Mesquite, and he had showed up there the second day I was in town. But like I say, Lee Harvey Oswald and I never discussed anything about the assassination, even though I assume we both knew what was happening, but we never discussed it.
Is there anything you can tell me about the death of Officer J.D. Tippit?
I do not wish to touch base on that. I have no comment on that.
Do you know who killed him?
Yes, I do.
Is the man still alive?
The man that killed T.J. Tippit is still alive. He was alive as of 3 years ago. I haven't talked to him in the past 3 years. But Lee Harvey Oswald did not kill T.J. Tippit. Because the man that killed the police officer that afternoon had come by my hotel and told me, he said, things got messed up today. He said, and I killed a cop. And my remarks to that was, well, you did what you had to do. And he left shortly thereafter.
So then there was one other person that was part of the team other than you and Nicoletti Roselli?
The person I'm referring to now was not a part of the team to assassinate John F. Kennedy. As far as I know, his job would have been to kill Lee Harvey Oswald, from what I understood, without asking any direct questions, because I did not want to know what anyone else was doing. All I wanted to know was what my assignment was, what I was to do, and the least I know about other people, the better off I am, because I didn't want very many people knowing who I was or what I'm doing.
Would you have known who would have given him orders to kill Officer Tippit?
No, I would not, because that contract would have come from a different source.
Did you see Jack Ruby in that plaza that day?
Yes, Jack Ruby was in the plaza that day.
Where was he?
At one point, he was standing on the same side with his back to me from the grassy knoll, down close to the sidewalk. But I didn't watch other people in the plaza that day. I scanned the crowd. I just seen a few faces. But I was solely concentrated for the few moments that I had the weapon out looking through the scope. I was concentrating on the primary target. And when that was over with, I wasn't looking behind me to see who was coming or who was running. And I remember when the shots had been fired and it was all over, nobody responded immediately. I don't care how fast they say the police acted. People were stopped, they were stunned, including the police officers. And the police officers on the motorcycles, it took them, I'm going to say maybe 10 seconds before they even responded to what was happening. It's like everybody was waiting for someone to tell them what to do. And at that point, I started to walk away. There had been a couple of people in the vicinity that I was in. I'm going to say probably 15 yards in front of me, close to the edge of the fence where I was at. And I was about 15 feet from the end of it. As I was walking away, the police were running up the grassy knoll and other people, and I know these two men were turning people back. Who they were, I don't know. I didn't bother to turn and look back. I kept walking away.
Did you notice a man dressed in a suit and tie, and I believe he had a hat on with a camera sitting up on the pergola?
No, I did not notice him.
I'm talking about Abraham Zapruder.
Yeah, I did not notice him. I was still walking. But if I would have seen someone making my picture at that point, I don't understand what my reaction would have been. I know after I'd put the fireball away, I know I had a Colt 45 inside my pocket on the left side of me. My briefcase was in my right hand. And I was prepared to shoot my way out there if it came down to that.
There was a picture made of you behind the fence. It was taken by Mary Mormon from across the street. You probably couldn't see her. Does that surprise you?
Yes, it surprised me because I really figured everyone who had cameras would have been pointed at the motorcade. because when I pull my weapon from the briefcase, at that point, there's nobody standing down there looking at me or looking up at the knoll. Everybody is waiting for the motorcade to make the turn to come down through there, and everyone's exciting, and the uproar and the people murmuring, the noise is louder at this point. And like I say, there's no one looking behind them. Even the security and the police officers that are situated through the crowd, there's nobody looking at areas, there's nobody looking at rooftops, there's nobody looking at windows that I could see. Everybody is concentrating strictly on the motorcade.
I have a picture of you standing behind the fence. Will you autograph it for me someday?
Someday.
Okay.
But not now.
I understand. I had to ask you that.
Okay.
What type of shell was in the fireball that you fired? Could you tell me about the fireball?
The fireball was designed basically in early '61, manufactured and produced. A few production models came out in '61 and '62. But the barrel was too thin and they kept exploding on us. And finally they got the barrel redone and rebored to heavier, the material. And from originally it went from a .221 to a .222 caliber, which is nothing but a .22 shell over-exaggerated and expanded for higher velocity. But what it fired was a .221, and it's called the XP-2100 Remington Fireball, but it took a .222 casing. And it's a single-shot, bolt-action pistol, scope mounted on it. And it was a pistol that was actually way ahead of its time. If you used to see one, I don't know if they're going to show you a picture of one or not, but it is a very beautiful handgun and one of the most elite pistols I believe ever manufactured. Although a lot of your people like 44 Magnums and everything else and 357s. At this point, I prefer a smaller caliber for something like that because at 100 yards, the gun is very effective. Because most people take a pistol to be only good for 30, 40 feet. And something that you would use in a room, but a Remington Fireball is more of a modified cut-down rifle.
It shoots a regular shell? Or?
.222. It's .222. It's a lot longer than your average .222, or excuse me, it's a lot longer than your average .22 round that you put into a .22 rifle. And it's a special casing, and you could not fire this through a .22 rifle, through a .22 caliber.
But now, correct me if I'm wrong, the Remington Fireball XP-100 will fire both .221s and .222s?
Yes, it will.
It takes some sort of modification, though,
yes,
to fire .222. What exactly does it take?
The barrel had to be reinforced. If you didn't have the barrel reinforced, the barrel could possibly blow up in your face.
Did you shoot a regular shell in it, or was it some sort of loaded or modified shell? Or
I shot a .222 with a mercury load in it. We used a mercury load. The .222 was designed to fragmentate. But what a lot of people didn't realize at that time, because the gun was still in the early production model and didn't go on sale to the public until 1963, but the .222 had a habit that would ricochet if it didn't get a direct hit. And we couldn't afford for something to ricochet. So that was why a friend of mine had made special rounds for me at that time, and I had taken 6 rounds with me down there. And wherever you hit at, if you got any type of bone structure, the round would fragmentate and explode. And the round would be traveling at approximately about 3,100 feet per second, which meant you would get penetration then explosion. But without the mercury load and I did not get a direct hit, there's a strong possibility that it would ricochet, and I would not have time to reload and fire a second shot.
Who gave you the orders to shoot John F. Kennedy?
Charles Nicoletti that morning at 10:30. And we didn't know if I was going to shoot it or not. I was only in there as backup in case something went wrong or they missed.
Do you know where Mr. Nicoletti got his orders?
He got his orders from Sam Giancana.
Would you have any idea where Mr. Giancana got his orders, or if he even got an order?
I would have no knowledge of that whatsoever.
Would Tony Accardo have been involved?
If Sam Giancana handed something out, I would say yes, that Mr. Tony Accardo had to be involved.
Would any of the other families would have been involved? Or do you have any way of knowing?
I have no way of knowing. But I don't believe this is something that Mr. Giancana would engineer on his own. So word had to come from somebody who approached those people. I have no knowledge. I could only go back to the point of Mr. Nicoletti, Johnny Roselli, and myself at that point. And Lee Harvey Oswald, his part, showing me around the area, letting me know the major roads there and where I could go out and test fire a weapon.
Has anybody paid you any money for this interview, Jim?
Nobody has paid me any money for this interview, and I've asked for nothing.
Why are you telling all of this? Why are you coming forth with this after 30 years?
In the beginning of this, Mr. Joe West He got a lead on me and came to me. First he wrote me a letter. I denied any knowledge of it. Told him he had me mistaken with someone else. And they had been calling the institution. The counselor came one day while I was on visit and wanted me to call somebody on the phone. I told him I'm here 365 days a year. Don't bother me while I am on my visit. They can talk to me some other time, or you can talk to me anytime you want to, because I'm locked up here. And the following day, they got me out of my cell and said they wanted me to call Mr. West. And at that point, I called Mr. West, and I told him at that time, I said, Mr. West, you have approximately 3 minutes to convince me why I should even talk to you.
That's exactly what you said.
And those were my exact words.
I heard the tape.
And Mr. West started talking to me on the phone, and he started touching personal points. And the phone calls in the prison are all recorded. And I told him, I said, whoa, stop. I said, Mr. West, if you wish to see me or talk to me, come see me. I don't want to talk on the phone no more. Mr. West immediately, therefore, came to visit me. The first day, him and I sit and we talked basically about weather, sports, about a lot of other things, because I had refused to discuss the Kennedy assassination with him. He came back the second day. I felt more comfortable with him. And he explained to me that he was getting the case reopened, and he was taking it back to trial, that he wanted JFK's body exhumed. He had the petition for exhuming the body. And so he wanted to have me subpoenaed to testify in court if he could get the trial or get the case reopened. And excuse me.
Good break.
Yeah.
He's about to die.
Yeah. Okay. At this point, I told him, I said, if he could get me immunity, I said, I can't talk about it for the simple reason I'll be facing criminal charges. And he told me that he had an excellent attorney, and what they would do is they would try to proceed to get me immunity so that I could come forth and talk if I was subpoenaed. And at that point, we talked for a while, and I agreed that I would testify and come forward if they got me the immunity. Things didn't go accordingly as planned, and I don't know how to say a lot of it, but the government went around the proper parties, and they came to visit me, and we had a situation that I don't want to touch base on at this time, and my life has already been threatened over this whole mess, and I'm giving this tape right now, and I don't want to be identified at this time, but I'm not coming forward for any patriotic causes, but I'm coming forward on it because of Mr. Joe West himself.
Who has threatened you, Jimmy?
I have been threatened by both organized crime and by the government.
Can you identify the people of the government who threatened you?
I wouldn't do that because I've never given up anyone in my life, and I won't start now. If they wish to kill me, then I have to accept the fate that comes with it. But I will not finger point anyone or anything like that at this time.
Has the FBI been here to visit you?
Yes, the FBI was here to visit me. And the FBI has tried to discredit me on a lot of things. But people that you have conversed with that has things, and I have given you information, not to put anybody in prison, I've given you information on special operations that was carried out by the government that no one could have possibly known about outside the agency itself, and I believe that you have corroborated my story on several different aspects.
Do you know anything about the death of David Ferry?
Yes, I do, but at this time I do not wish to discuss that.
What? Move that mic over just about 6 minutes.
Mine or his?
Yours.
Which way do you want to go?
To the left.
My breath is getting it now.
Just move
Like that?
Stand if you would.
Like that?
Just a hair more.
When we start talking about people dying, we're talking about murder, and we're talking about a crime that has no statute of limitations on it. And as long as I have no immunity, there's not much that I can say about David Ferry or a couple of other parties that I have been asked about.
Well, then obviously you know who killed David Ferry.
Obviously, yes, I do know who killed David Ferry. He died of a severe brain hemorrhage, but the severe brain hemorrhage was brought on in a specific way. And if they was to examine, they would find out, and I have already stated at one point, where the tear in the tissue became after the severe brain hemorrhage. And I've waited for somebody to confirm that.
I'm working on it. What's your really inner feelings about all this, Jimmy, as a person, as a human being?
As a person, as a human being, I just want everybody to forget about me, put it all behind me. I'm sorry anybody ever caught up with me or found out who I was or what my involvement was.
Why did you open up to Joe West?
Joe West is the type of person You have to meet him and talk with him to really understand a man, but he's somebody that, it's just somebody that you like and you respect, and you're willing to do what you can to help them. And I've given Mr. West more than I've ever given anyone else in my life. And why? I don't really understand, except he's just that type of person. He has a magnetism about him. Joe West is a great man. I knew him a short time, but the time that I've known him, I felt like I knew him all my life. And there was only two other men in my life that I really treasured or valued. One was Mr. Nicoletti, and the other man is still alive, and I can't use his name. But he's in his 80s. But he's a wonderful man, and I would do anything either one of those men ever asked me to do. And when I say anything, I mean anything and everything.
Do you have any remorse about what happened in Dallas in November of '63?
It's hard to have remorse for something that has been done for so long ago, and at that time everyone felt was right. And if I didn't like someone, how could I have remorse for someone that I didn't like?
So you felt personally that Mr. Kennedy should have been taken out?
Oh, I felt that all along. But my reasons was specifically because of the Bay of Pigs. But me and a lot of other Cubans felt that way. Because we felt betrayed.
By John Kennedy?
By John F. Kennedy. We had airborne waiting to go in. We had battle wagons ready, and they got no support whatsoever. They got slaughtered. They went to prison. They were captured. They were killed. They were punished, tortured. That's because Mr. Kennedy the president wouldn't give his word to go. And all he had to do was give the authorization. And the Cuban deal was all over with. It was ours. But he took it from us. He had the power to say yes or no, and he said no. He vetoed it.
Did you ever know a man named Richard Helms?
Yes, I did. Deputy Director of the CIA.
Did you ever know a man named Allen Dulles?
I knew who he is, but I never met him personally.
Did you ever know Antonio Viciani?
Yes, I did. I consider him to be a good friend of mine. And to my knowledge, Antonio Viciani was not involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Whether he had knowledge or not, I do not know, but I know he was heavily involved with the CIA and many other operations, certain groups, from the old White Hand all the way through Alpha 66 to the different groups we had.
Was Mr. Helms involved?
Mr. Helms knew about the organizations, but Mr. Helms gave me no directions direct from that. All my directives came from David Atlee Phillips, because David Atlee Phillips was my controller.
I understand that it's a serious question, and I know you've already answered it once, but I just want to try to say it again. Do you have any knowledge at all of the CIA participating in the hit on Kennedy?
The CIA never once told me that they were going to kill Kennedy. I never heard it from David Atlee Phillips or anyone else.
Do you know how Charles Nicoletti got to Dallas?
I do not know how Charles Nicoletti got there except for flying on commercial airlines. Johnny Roselli flew in, I know specifically, on a MATS airline because he told me.
On what kind of airline?
MATS, Military Air Service. MATS is Military Air Transport Service, is what it stands for. We call it MATS.
Could you give me a full sentence on that, Johnny Roselli?
Okay, Johnny Roselli, the morning we were going to Fort Worth, he told me, he said he was in Washington. I was in Washington yesterday. He said, I got lucky. I said, what do you mean lucky? He said, I caught a MATS fly it out. Well, for people who don't understand MATS, that's Military Air Transport Service. It was a military fly-it, and allegedly, like I say, I don't know who flew the plane. Johnny told me he was on, but he said he was being flown in by the CIA. He said they flew him there. And basically, that's all I know of. And whether they had a flight going there or not, I don't know what that flight was all about. I never had knowledge, and I never asked people what they're doing or where they've been or any questions. I've always lived my life believing in silence. I believed in not knowing what the other man is doing. If you're doing something wrong, don't come tell me what you're doing, because I don't want to know in case you have a problem later. And I live that way here in prison. I have prisoners come up and tell me, we've got this coming in, we got that coming. I tell them, man, I don't want to know part of it. I don't want to know what you're doing. Don't tell me, because if you get snitched off, I don't want you thinking it's me.
I recall that you mentioned, you want to take a pause and drink some water a second?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to ask you about that package. You go ahead and holler when. Anytime you're ready. Tell me in your own words about the package that Mr. Nicoletti gave you after this.
After many, many years, several years, we started having a small problem. Things were arising. And We had the Senate Intelligence Committee was calling people back, the Warren Commission, everybody had been involved in a lot of things, and we're getting a lot of static. And at this point, I'd kept myself totally obsolete, local, out of the highlight, the spotlight. The only two people that knew I was in Dealey Plaza that day for sure was Johnny Roselli and Charles Nicoletti.
Why do you think that is?
Well, we never went around telling people what we'd done. If we went out and we did something, or we popped somebody, or made a hit on them, whatever you want to call it, we didn't go sit around the tavern and brag about it, or we didn't go down to the local restaurant and talk about what we'd done.
So as far as Sam Giancana knew, Charles Nicoletti was the man who did the shooting.
That's all he knew. He knew that he was there, and whether he knew Johnny Roselli was there or not, I don't know, but I would say yes, he knew Johnny Roselli was there.
Start that sentence with the only thing Sam Giancana knew.
As far as I know, the only thing that Sam Giancana knew for Dealey Plaza that day was the part of Charles Nicoletti and Johnny Roselli, because Sam Giancana had never discussed it with me. Only Charles Nicoletti and Johnny Roselli and I admit to that point, because we kept a very tight circle, and we always thought the less people know, the better off we are, the safer we are. And as the years went by, Sam got killed, I believe, in June of 1975, Sam Giancana. He was killed at his home in 75. Charles Nicoletti, Johnny Roselli was next. He was killed, I believe, I don't remember the exact date, but I know it was September, I believe, of 76. And Charles Nicoletti, I remember that date because him and I were very, very close. And he wasn't supposed to go out that night unless I was with him. But he was killed at a restaurant in the west suburbs of Chicago at a place called the Golden Horns. And he was executed there that night. And that was on March 29th of 1977.
Do you know anything about what happened to those three men, or who might have done them in June?
Well, on who killed those men, I do not know who the actual man was that killed Johnny Roselli or Charles Nicoletti. But the night that Sam Giancana was killed, I know that Johnny Roselli was in town that night. And I know that him and Sam Giancana was very close. And I figure he was probably the only one that could get into his house at the time of the morning that Sam would let him in. But to say he specifically killed him, I can't say that because I don't really know, because it was never admitted to me. But I know Johnny left and went back to Miami. But anyway, after Sam was dead, Johnny was dead. I didn't know who killed Charles Nicoletti, and if I had have known, I would have went after them myself. So that knowledge never became known to me. But right before Chuck was killed, we knew that there was a problem, and I'd been riding constantly with him and staying in his companionship, more or less as his bodyguard watching on anyone that we went to meet. And I would usually carry 245s with me. And I'd keep a windbreaker across my lap with each gun laying in my lap with a hand on each one. And we'd been very, very careful. And approximately 2 weeks before his death, he had given me a package and told me, he says, put this away. He said, someday you might need this. He said, there may be people looking for it. He says, do not let this fall into the wrong hands. Well, I took the package and I wrapped it into cheesecloth and put some plastic around it and put it in a little metal box, and I went out and I buried it, put it where no one would find it. And I'd left it there. After his execution, and he was killed on March 29th of 77, I'm going to estimate it's probably between a week and a half to 2.5 weeks right thereafter, I don't know the exact date, that I was leaving one of our local clubs where we had card games going and making book and everything, and it's all shortly past midnight, I guess 1 o'clock in the morning. As I walked out, I was abducted, and I was gassed and thrown into a vehicle and taken away, and I'd been interrogated for roughly, I don't know, maybe day and a half, whatever it was, 2 days even. I'm not even sure how long they had me at that point, because when I come out of it, I was in pretty bad shape. But I had went through a very rough interrogation, and I knew it wasn't the outfit that did it, because if there was any doubt there, they would have killed me. So I figured it had to be a government agency that had picked me up. And they wanted the notes and the books and the diary of Charles Nicoletti. And I never gave it to them. And I was thrown from a car, left stripped, my legs and hands still bound behind me. I was picked up at one of the suburban towns of just west of Chicago. And the police recovered me, took me in, and then I family had been notified, and they wanted to take me to the hospital. And I didn't want to go to the hospital. And I went home, and I had my right-hand man come over at that point and stay like at the house with me, because I couldn't even get up and walk to the bathroom. He had to pick me up and carry me anywhere I went. That's how bad shape I was in. And at this point, my wife had already thought that I was dead, so had everybody else in town when I had been picked up and carried away that way. And as soon as I was able, I got up and made sure I wasn't being followed or watched by anyone. I went and I dug the package up. And the package that was there was identification for Secret Service. In that package, there was his personal diary that he had made a lot of notes on, things that people that had been killed over the years. And there was also the map that Johnny Roselli and I had received that morning in Fort Worth, and the man that was supposed to be Jack Ruby when we had met over there, and he had gotten that package. That map was there. And I destroyed that at that time, because I knew then that somebody was really after it and wanting it.
But you kept Nicoletti's diary?
Yes, I still got that.
Can you tell me anything about its contents?
No, I won't get into that, because we're getting involved in organized crime, and I will not do anything to hurt anybody, anywhere in that branch. This way, the only thing I'm seeing here is Charles Nicoletti is now dead, so is Johnny Roselli and Sam Giancana. I can cause them no harm. But I will never, ever put a man in prison. I would not give anyone up right now for my own freedom. And that's how I stand. And that is how I will live by it, and I will die by that standard.
Jimmy, you lived around death and crime all your life. How do you feel about death?
How do I feel about death? To me, it's just another new adventure. Don't get me wrong, I'm in no hurry to die. When the time comes, though, I will accept it. And I've looked at death several times in my life. I have had people from the outfit, the police officers, put guns to my head and threatened to kill me. And I've looked them in the eye and told them to shoot. And a couple of them, I told them they didn't have the balls to shoot. And a couple of local cops, they come to my home one night and surrounded my house, took me out. After working me over severely in the front yard, took me down to the railroad tracks before they took me to the station house. Took me to the railroad tracks, driven me out of the squad car, handcuffed, put a gun on my head and told me, "You piece of shit, we're not taking you in, we're going to kill you." And I told them, "You ain't got the balls to do it."
Obviously they didn't.
And they didn't. They took me on in. My wife was waiting at the precinct station. The lawyers were there. And I was released approximately 45 minutes later.
Jimmy, is there anything else that you want to say from your heart about what has occurred in your life, or particularly about November of '63? Is there anything you want to add or you want to say personally?
No. I've lived a good life. Did a lot of things, more than probably any 100 men has. But I've lived my life, and I can't look back and say, well, I would change this or I would change that, because I wouldn't.
When people see this interview on television, what do you think people will think?
Most of them, I don't think they'll believe me.
How do we know it's true, Jimmy?
There's no way to really prove it, except, like I say, some of the people, you have corroborated a lot of the things that I've told you. You've had people corroborate it, and everything I've told you so far, it's been there. It could be backed up and checked in the files from the CIA to the FBI. And I want to clarify one thing. I've given you nothing on organized crime, on anything they've ever done. And I will never do that. And I am not a member of organized crime. I have never been a member, but I've had a lot of close associates with organized crime.
Where were you born, Jim?
Excuse me, cut.
Just let it roll, we're okay.
I was born January 1942, Alabama.
You're a Southern boy.
Southern boy. But I was taken from there at a very early age, and I grew up as a child on the streets of Chicago. And I love Chicago. I grew up in an all-Italian community. When we first moved in, I was the only kid on the block that couldn't speak Italian. Everybody spoke Italian. Hardly anybody spoke English. But I ran with them. We finally started communicating, and I would live in their homes with them, eating stuff that I had never even seen or heard of, and they would come to my house and eat things that they had never heard of, such things as black-eyed peas, cornbread, biscuits, red-eye gravy, and things like that. You know what I mean? I loved the pizza, and I loved the pasta, the meatballs, and everything. I thought it was great. So it was something that we shared, and we all got along good. In the beginning, we didn't get along, but after they beat me up a few times and found out that I couldn't be discouraged, and I kept running back to them, we finally got to all be good friends, and we grew up together. And as a child, as a kid, I don't think I was probably more than 10 or 11 years old. I remember on Saturday mornings, I'd be sitting out front of the deli, and one of the old-time gangsters used to come along, Guy Cerrone, great man, come up in this big old black Cadillac, and Me and my little Italian friend would be out there, we'd be shining the hubcaps on his car and wiping it down with our big towels, and then he'd come out, he'd usually throw us a $5 bill. And back then, that was a lot of money. And we thought we were really somebody just because we knew those people. And as we grew up, and we started getting into more trouble our own self.
Is that how you more or less got involved in working with them?
That's how more or less people knew that when I got caught, I didn't tell on nobody. And I had a good name for being stand-up around town, even early as a kid growing up as a teenager. Wild, driving fast cars, riding motorcycles. I had my first car, I think I was just turning 14.
Did Charles Nicoletti know your background in warfare and in shooting? And
yes, he did. Because after
say it by starting with Charles.
Charles Nicoletti knew of my background. He watched me around town as time passed by, running around the cars and stuff. He knew I had been into the service. He knew I was familiar with weapons. And I came back from Laos. I did 90 days in the hospital, being evaluated. And the day I walked out of there, I was recruited by David Atlee Phillips. Showed up that day as I walked out of the hospital. And my first assignment with the agency was after I had been shooting in Laos and made my mark there. They thought that I could be of use to the agency at that point, and I was training some Cubans at that time. And that's when I first got involved at Chandler's Bay, the Bay of Pigs. And after all that blew up and went down, and everybody got their face dirty, and the CIA got dirty in the Bay of Pigs and things, I was home for a while, and I started racing stock cars. And Mr. Nicoletti took a shine to me. He'd watch me race cars, and you know, I was up and coming, knew my involvement with weapons, but he wasn't concerned about my weapons in the beginning. He was only concerned about my driving ability. And I admired him, and to me, he walked on water. I got to tell you, I love the man. He was one of the two greatest men I ever knew.
What kind of guy was he?
He was very well-spoken, well-mannered, quiet. He didn't swear. There was no profanity in the man. I probably only heard him swear maybe twice in my whole life, and that was at the FBI. They had us under surveillance a couple different times. And he was very quiet, but he was also very deadly. It's like a rattlesnake, you might say, without the rattlers. And you never knew when he was going to strike.
What kind of guy was Roselli?
Roselli was, he was flashy. Did a lot of talking. He talked too much. They used to bother me. But he was one of those guys, he liked to flash. He flashed the money. He dressed nice. Mr. Nicoletti dressed nice also. But Mr. Nicoletti did not flash in the same style that Johnny Roselli did. There's much difference, it's night and day. Johnny was loud, boisterous with everything.
What kind of guy was Sam Giancana?
Sam Giancana was a wonderful, lovable old man that was quiet, anybody's grandfather. I mean, he was great. But boy, if you got him riled up, it's like with a little terrier bulldogs getting a hold of you. He could just tear you up. He was good. I respected him a lot and everything else. But I didn't, Sam Giancana, I didn't work for him. He never gave me no orders, never told me to do anything. The only ones I took orders from was from two people. One was Charles Nicoletti, and like I say, the other man is still alive, and I want to identify him.
What kind of guy was David Atlee Phillips?
David Atlee Phillips was a cool character, very good-natured. I guess I put him through a lot of paces because I couldn't understand his way of thinking in the beginning. But he used to tell me at that time that he could kill more people with a typewriter than I could kill with a machine gun running around trying to shoot everybody in the world. And I couldn't believe that. I couldn't understand it. And as time went by and me knowing David Phillips and starting to listen after he grabbed me, shook me around a couple of times, he got me to pay attention to what he was saying, and I got to thinking, I realized the man was right, that there's more to things than running around with a gun. There's your psychological warfare. And what you can do with a piece of paper, writing a newspaper article and confusing people in different countries, and even here, I mean, it's just people believe what they read, more or less. Basically, we come down to the newspaper. And now that they hear it on TV, they really get into it.
What kind of guy was Lee Harvey Oswald?
Lee Harvey Oswald, everybody plays him up to be a nut job and everything else, but the man was very intelligent, had a very high IQ. He was very quiet, self-centered. Lee Harvey Oswald was not a boaster. He was not a party man. He didn't run around drinking or cabareting or none of those things. Lee Harvey Oswald led a very close and self-secluded life. And for the people, a lot of times, what they've said about him is totally untrue.
What do you think his part was in that plaza that day, Jimmy?
I think his plot was to plant evidence to mislead everybody. And I don't believe that Lee Harvey Oswald had any inkling that his life was in danger whatsoever.
How many shots do you think he fired?
Lee Harvey Oswald never fired a shot.
Somebody had to fire from that 6th floor according to the trajectory. Was there anybody else up there with him, or do you know?
As far as I know, there's nobody up there. I did not even know Lee Harvey Oswald was up there. And now when you're standing in a place like that, it's hard to tell where the noise is coming from. You've got echoes, you've got all these people. Excuse me, your sound is being muffled. But at this point, I don't even know Lee Harvey Oswald is in the Texas and Book Depository building there. I have no even knowledge of that at that point. The last time I saw him was the day before.
How do you know he didn't fire a shot?
I just don't believe he would. Lee Harvey Oswald, as much as they proclaimed him to be an assassin, a killer, I don't believe he was. Even in the Marine Corps, he had a small scar above his lip that he got hit with a rifle stock. He took a small scar in there. But Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't the type of person to run around and kill anybody.
Did you ever notice if he was left-handed or right-handed?
I never paid that much attention to it. He never fired a weapon around me. And we never sit down, we never wrote any letters together. When he drove, they say he couldn't drive, but Lee Harvey Oswald could drive. He didn't have a driver's license maybe, but the man could drive. Hell, he drove military trucks even. And let's face it, anybody that has been working at one of the American spy bases, especially like in Japan, like where he was at, there's no way this country's going to give them a visa to go anywhere even near Russia. And they photograph every man going in and out of the embassies in Mexico. All your embassies are watched. We watch them, they watch us. Back then, yesterday, even today, they've never stopped watching each other. Nobody runs into the other embassy without being spotted right away. They're under constant surveillance. And if you've had a top secret security clearance like Lee Harvey Oswald did, you just don't jump on a plane and fly to a foreign country, especially to a communist country, unless somebody's engineered and set it up for you to go to give this information. Why Lee Harvey Oswald went to Russia, I'll never know. And personally, I never asked him when I knew him. They used to have an old saying, curiosity killed the cat. All my life, I've never been curious. I've never asked people who they're dealing with or what they've done.
What do you feel about your place in history?
I don't even want to be remembered in history.
Why?
For what? I'm nobody. Who am I? I'm nobody special. I did a lot of work.
You're the man who killed John F. Kennedy.
Not necessarily. I hit him in the front. He was shot in the back also. I was just one of the two men. But other figures have been killed. Other political people in other countries have been killed. We've had gangsters killed in this country. I never chose the people to be killed. Somebody else elected John F. Kennedy to be killed. Whether it was a politician to be killed or whether it was a mob figure to be killed. I never chose the figures. Somebody else said they was wrong, said they did wrong. Just followed the orders. To me, it was like taking out the garbage.
That's a good line. Did you think, or have you ever thought about the fact that if you hadn't fired that shot, that Oswald may still be alive? Or tipping? Or does it matter to you, Jim?
That doesn't matter to me, but as far as that goes, if I hadn't have fired the shot, Kennedy would have been killed anyway, because the last shot from Nicoletti caught him in basically the left side of the skull and the back to push the head forward. So, basically speaking, he would have been killed either way. But I had waited till the last point for fields of fire for me before Jacqueline Kennedy would become in the line of fire. If I don't take it at this point, I'm losing my last chance for field of fire. Then I don't fire at all. And then if Nicoletti hadn't have fired, and neither one of us fired, he might have lived. Then the job wouldn't have been done.
Can you show me exactly using your finger where you shot at President Kennedy?
On whose face?
On yours. Just say my shot, you know.
Well, looking at the man would be to his left side for me. But if you're sitting in his position, then it would be on his right side. And it would have came in through on his head, it would have came in here and exited out the backside. And I would have measured at that point that 60% of the skull in the back of his head had left upon the impact.
How can you measure that?
Well, if you've shot several people in the head, and I was known for headshots, not just on that, but I'm talking about prior to that and in the service, on things that I had done. After a while, you get to know in the back of a skull it's going to approximately how much is missing.
Jimmy, in all your years in the service and all the activities you've been involved in...
My military service wasn't entirely that long, but my involvement with government agencies became overextended after a while.
In all of your years in organized crime and participating in and around death, murder, guns, etc., do you have any idea of how many people you've killed?
Yes, but I will not say. That has no bearing on it. The only party here that we're discussing about death, basically at this point, is John F. Kennedy. The other people there has no bearing on this case, and I don't even wish to discuss that.
I'm sorry I asked, but I was just looking for some human interest stuff.
I know, but like I say, I don't even want to quote that figure.
Didn't mean to.
I only have one person to judge me, and that's when I die.
You believe in God, Jim?
Well, whether they say I believe or not, I don't know. I guess I do in a way, because every time I've been in trouble, a lot of times I've looked down and I said, oh God, help me to get out of this, or help me to get this done. So basically I've caught myself praying to God probably on several occasions when I needed him. But like I say, I believe there's more to life than just here. I'm not saying I believe in heaven and hell. I'm just saying I believe there's another level of plane for us that we're going to all have to service on Sunday.
You told me one time on the phone that the two greatest lies in the world were religion and history.
Yep.
You want to elaborate on that a second?
Well, history has been changed to formicate to the way of the people of, how do you put it? If you look back and you investigate a lot of our history, you're going to find out a lot of our great causes was instigated by us itself, and we covered it up and made it look like we were being infringed upon by our rights on humanitarian purposes and freedom and democracy. And so when you wave that banner, and all my life I believed in Mother Apple Pie and the American way of life and freedom and democracy. But things over the years, especially in the early 70s, started changing my way of thinking a lot on things, because I seen how people were being abused and mistreated and being assassinated only because they knew something, not because they had the wrong politics or they were trying to endanger this country. Excuse me. And religion has killed more people than all the wars we've ever had. People die every day in the name of religion. They started out that way in the beginning, and it's still that way. Nothing has ever changed. Because everybody wants to say one person's religion is better than the other one. And the Irish fighting each other over there, the Muslims, the Serbs, the Croatians, you name it. There's always somebody wanting to kill somebody over their religion, over their God. And yet they say there's only one God. But I don't want to elaborate on the Bible or get into it, because that only creates too many other things going, and it leads one product to another product. But I try to stay away from religion. I try to stay away from history as much as possible. The only interest to me of history is if I was going into another country, or if I was going to do something, I wanted to read about them and know about their culture. I wanted to know what their beliefs were. And I wasn't interested in the beginning of their time. I only wanted to know about the last 10, 15, 20 years of how their government had been run and what their politics were. That's all I was interested in, or what religion was the strongest religion in that country, and how I could deal with that situation. Because I could learn more from knowing that country than I could from everybody telling me what everybody thought about it.
Jimmy, if today was November 22nd, 1963, and you were standing in Dealey Plaza right now, would you kill the president again?
If I was under orders, or if I had been asked to assist, I would do just like I always did. I would follow orders. I never disobeyed an order.
All right, pause. I think we may have it. I think we can wrap. I can't think of it.
As far as John F. Kennedy goes, the president, even though he was the president, today everybody tells us what a great man he was. But back then, and I was there, and I was seeing the things that were happening from the Cuban Missile Crisis and everything else. Nobody really liked Kennedy back then that I could find. Everybody I talked to didn't like him. Like I say, I had my own personal reasons for the Bay of Pigs. But yet other people, from the military to the Secret Service to the FBI, to everybody, I mean, even the people around him, even his own staff, because he was, like I say, I won't get into all his bad habits, but as far as I know, nobody liked the man. But yet today they tell us what a great man he was, but that's only history, and only because he was president of the United States. And nobody likes to admit that we made a mistake.
Did you or any of your friends, Nicolette or Roselli, want to know about Marilyn Monroe and John Kennedy?
I don't know if they knew or not. I never asked, And again, as far as other people involved, such as Marilyn Monroe and all those other stories that people have told, when we sit around or we went somewhere, once Mr. Nicoletti and I had done something, that was history. That was yesterday. We never talked about it thereafter. It was never brought up again. Because that's how he wanted it, and with his training and his beliefs. And like I say, I wanted to follow in his footsteps because I believed in this man so much. I worshiped this man. At that time, you talk about God, he was my God back then. Like I say, he walked on water.
Did Nicoletti work for the mob and the CIA too on different occasions?
Mr. Nicoletti was strictly organized crime. As far as the CIA goes, Johnny Roselli was the liaison between the mob and the CIA. And Nicoletti had talked with him a few times, but this is what got Nicoletti killed, I believe, was the involvement when he started talking with the CIA or the Secret Service or whoever had talked to him, and he was being called back because I think they killed him the day before he was to appear at the New Intelligence Hearing Committee or whatever it was they had going, because somebody was afraid he was going to talk. And it broke my heart afterwards when somebody told me that Mr. Nicoletti had talked and that he was dirty, because I found that hard to believe. And I always felt if Mr. Nicoletti was dirty and if he had been giving people up, I felt he would have given the diary up. He could have made a deal for his own life and for security and protection. And he didn't. He died. And we knew that he was in great trouble at that time. I didn't really understand the depth of it because I did not believe that the man would give anybody up. Now, I don't know who killed Mr. Nicoletti. I don't know whether the organized crime family did it or I don't know whether the government killed him. I have no knowledge of who killed him. Like I say, if I had known, believe me, I would have been hunting them down. And I would have died trying to get the people that got Mr. Nicoletti.
So the U.S. government will kill people?
Definitely.
Say it.
The U.S. government will kill people. That's definite. There's no problems. There are no questions. He's not the only one they killed. But like I say, if they killed Nicoletti, I don't know for sure. I don't know who killed him. But if I did know, I would have put an all-out effort. And there's only one thing in my life I have ever feared, and that was failure, to complete an operation that I had started on. And like I say, when I say I love Mr. Nicoletti, not as a man and a woman, but I loved him as a protege, as a father, as a brother, or whatever. But to me, like I say, he was my God. He walked on water.
When you were walking out of Dealey Plaza from behind that fence, did anybody try to stop you or anybody ask you anything, or did anybody see your gun? Did anybody say anything to you?
As I was leaving Dealey Plaza, nobody tried to stop me. There was 2 police officers within probably 20, 25 feet of me that had been stopped by somebody posing as Secret Service agents. I could hear part of the conversation. I did not look back over my shoulder. I did not run. I didn't stand around. I just carried a natural gait and proceeded to exit. That's just like a businessman walking away from lunch.
Wrap. Can you think of anything else you want to add, brother?
The 3 organized crime figures implicated by James E. Files as co-conspirators in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy met with the following fates. On June 19, 1975, Sam Giancana, who was to be transported to Washington, D.C. to testify before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence 5 days later, was shot to death in his home. In 1976, Johnny Roselli gave top-secret testimony before the committee. Shortly afterwards, and before he could be called in for a second appearance, he was brutally murdered in Miami. Roselli's murder prompted the formation of the U.S. House Select Committee on Assassinations. In 1977, the committee announced it would call in Charles Nicoletti. Nicoletti was murdered shortly after the committee's announcement. On March 29, 1979, the House Committee concluded that President Kennedy's death was probably the result of a conspiracy. James E. Files continues to serve the remainder of his 50-year sentence for shooting a policeman in Joliet, Illinois. As of this publication, he must serve a remaining 43 years. The FBI has officially dismissed Files' confession as non-credible.
but I went down like a week before the assassination. The purpose of that was for me to go to Dallas, look over the area, learn dead-end streets, railroad crossings, time for train crossings. They already knew the regular motorcade route that he would be taking.
The President's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the trademark.
I said, well, the spot I like best is up on the grassy knoll behind that stockade fence. He says, why there? I said, I got the railroad yard for cover. At 100 feet, I'm talking about, we're shooting now from the grassy knoll down to the highway to the street there, we're talking roughly 30, 35 yards. We're only talking 100 feet. This is like shooting fish in a barrel. As I was walking away, he told me, don't run. He said, just walk away natural, Jimmy. He said, don't show no attention.
The President of the United States is dead. It's official, as of just a few moments ago.
There was nobody behind that stockade fence but me at that point. Nobody. All the time I was there, I was alone.
I'm fully announced North Parkland Hospital, coming to the approach. The officer waiting me down. He's waiting me around. There's a cordon. There's already a cordon of police officers.
A bullet right through the head.
I didn't shoot anybody, sir. I haven't been told what I'm here for.
Do you have a lawyer?
No, sir, I don't. No, they're taking me in because of the fact that I live in the Soviet Union. I'm just a patsy.
There's the man with a gun.
I'm fixing to lose my fill of fire. And at this point, either I shoot or I can put it in a suitcase and leave, one or the other. I took the shot.
What is your real name?
My real name is James Sutton.
And you were born when?
I was born January 24th, 1942 in Alabama. And if you find my birth certificate, it will plainly state deceased at birth.
How was that arranged?
I have no idea, but I was trying to get a birth certificate for my own records, and they could not locate one at first. And the lawyer in Alabama went through everything, went to the Capitol, and when he got through, he found that 3 months later, I had a birth certificate in there that says deceased at birth.
Now, can the mob do something like that, or is that the government?
That's only the government. Mob knows a lot of things. They got ways to get things done, but when it comes into this kind of stuff, that's out of their category. I'm gonna tell you, when it comes to government and underhanded work, the mob, they're kindergarten. They're kindergarten. I might upset a lot of people in the family saying that, but they're kindergarten when it comes to working with the government.
Is it true that during the Clinton administration that you were presented as a threat to national security?
That was in 1998. Historian for the 82nd Airborne. He was doing a lot of research area on me. His name was John Grady. But he did a lot of research on me and checked through a lot of people, found out to me to be credible. He verified a lot of things that him and I discussed. He come here to visit me. And when him and I was corresponding, he was approached by the Secret Service. And they warned him that I was a threat to national security. And in 1998, I don't remember what month it was, but Janet Reno and President Bill Clinton at that time declared me as a threat to national security. It was basically for training manuals and formulas and information they retrieved out of one of my storage sheds when they raided it.
Boy, today under Homeland Security, they probably have you as a terrorist threat, since you know how to make bombs.
That could be. I know there is a U.S. Marshals detainer on me at this time.
U.S. Marshals what?
There is a U.S. Marshals detainer on me at this time.
What does that mean?
That means the day I walk out of here, the U.S. Marshals will be here to pick me up. They want to talk to me. There is no outstanding charges. There's no charges against me. What they have against me is the detainer. All they want to do is talk to me. What they want to know is they want to be notified when I leave here, in other words. When Joe West first originally contacted me here at Stateville Prison, I was on a visit. The counselor came in the visiting room where I was at and stated that she wanted me to come out and make a phone call. I told him, you have 3 minutes to convince me why I should talk to you. As Joe started talking to me, I told him, I said, whoa, stop. I said, you're on a lot of touchy spots. I said, these phone calls are recorded. Every phone call going in and coming out is recorded. If you want to talk to me that bad, then I suggest you come and visit me. Joe West had me put him on his visiting list. He come up to visit me. The first day, I wouldn't even talk to him about the Kennedy situation. We got into sports, weather, generally about prison, local things till I got comfortable with him. The next day, after I thought it over all night, Joe West seemed like a pretty nice guy. I really liked Joe. He had a magnetism about him. The next day, we sat down, we got serious, and then we started talking. Oh, I asked him, he said that someone had informed him that I was there. He said he had a reliable source. And I didn't know for quite a while who that source was. It was quite some time later before I learned the fact that the FBI was aware of my presence as early as 1964. Because I never knew that anyone ever knew about me. But Zach Sheldon, from what I understand, and I'm only quoting this from hearsay, that Zach was the one that stated and gave me to Joe West the information on me, that I was in Dealey Plaza. Well, the whole thing is, like with Joe West died. He passed away, never knowing that I was one of 2 shooters there in Dealey Plaza that day. Joe West never knew I was on the grassy knoll. Joe West had the case in court. He wanted to exhume John F. Kennedy's body. And that's what he was fighting for. And at this point, when I talked to Joe West, I explained to him that John F. Kennedy had been hit in the head with a mercury round, a special load. At this point, I explained to him he can use this in the courts to have the body exhumed because there would still be traces of mercury, because the traces of mercury do not disappear. It'll always be there. And so this is what Joe West wanted, to go back with more evidence and use this to get Kennedy's body exhumed, to look for traces of mercury.
And the court had accepted his case?
The court had accepted his case. But with his death, the case died. I've been drinking this water for the past 12 years with radium in it, so has every prisoner here. We wasn't aware of the water situation until Oliver Stone come along to make a movie here. And when he made his movie here, we see all these people from the movie company running around carrying bottles of water. Even the officers that worked here, they got suspicious. And that's when we started finding out this water's unhealthy.
Did you actually meet with Oliver Stone?
I met Oliver Stone 3 times. Matter of fact, I have a paper that Joe West, not Joe West, but Bob Vernon had Oliver Stone sign. Now, Bob Vernon come in after the Joe West deal. Bob Vernon took over for Joe West. Bob Vernon met with Oliver Stone, and he had him sign an agreement where they wanted to get me on film, but I refused to do that. I met with Oliver Stone 3 times.
And you never told him your story?
No, I did not tell Oliver Stone my story. I refused to discuss it with him. And Like I said, I've got a copy of this. I got Oliver Stone's signature, Bob Burnett, the only signature on it. It states what it's all about. The only thing missing is my signature, because I would never sign that paper for the agreement.
Why was that?
I didn't like the man.
Case closed.
Case closed. And if you'd like, I'd be more than happy to send you a copy of the document. And it's got Oliver Stone's original signature on it. And it has Bob Burnett's signature on it. The first time that I knew about anything being planned on Kennedy, I'd heard a lot of rumors that nobody liked Kennedy. They wanted to kill Kennedy. They wanted to assassinate him. They wanted to do everything to the man.
Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
I was upset with him over the bad pigs, but I never paid any attention to any of this at first, because, you know, everybody talks. Somebody gets mad at somebody, and right away, I'm going to take this guy out, I'm going to take that person out. Woo, 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 woo. You know, a lot of barking, junkyard dogs barking, you know. But I was sitting in the Harlow Grill that evening, playing the pinball machine, not the flipper kind, the kind with numbers where you gamble on and you put about $10 in to play a game. And Charles Nicoletti walked in, a man that I did a lot of work with, a man that I respected. And he walked in the back room where I was at, says, "Jimmy, let's go." I said, "I'll be with you in a minute." He reached over and tilted the machine and said, "Let's go now." My reply was, "Yes, sir, Mr. Nicoletti." I knew he wasn't in no mood to wait and hang around. He said, "I want to talk to you." I went out, I got in his car, and we went for a ride. He told me, he says, "We're going to do a friend of yours." I'm talking about President Kennedy, JFK. And I looked at him and I said, "What?" He says, "JFK." He says, "Your buddy." I said, "Well, he just busting, you know, giving me a hard time when he knew JFK. He knew how much I disliked the man." I looked at him and I laughed. I said, "Okay, fine with me. You get in arguments there." And at this point, I still kind of thought, you know, he just joking with me. But then he got real serious about it. And then we started talking, and he told me, he says, "What I'm going to want you to do," he says, "I'm going to look around." He says, "We'll search the area around the town here." He says, "You know everything pretty good," he says, "and see where we're going to do it at, what kind of weapons we're going to need, and other things like that," he says. And he mentioned, he said he was going to bring Johnny Roselli in on it. Fine with me, you know, I don't care who we work with. You know, I like Johnny, I had no problems with him. And originally we'd planned to do it in the Chicago area, but certain people didn't like that idea. Certain people high up in organized crime, they wasn't too happy about the idea of having something like that happen to that magnitude in their backyard, because they figured Bobby would really be down there, you know, and they already had their own little private wars going. So then we put it off, and this is like 6 months before the assassination ever really took place. So we decided, well, we'll take it moving. So I had no idea it was going to Texas at that point, because they didn't know where he was going to go. They were looking for an area to go. They had several different locations. There was New Orleans, and I don't know, there's other places he was going to. But when it come down to it, I had been told there was places that they had planned to do it. Other people had been authorized, you know, stuff like that. Just different rumors you hear. How much credibility is to it, I cannot say.
And describe the car.
The car was a '63 Chevy two-door Burgundy, Chevy Impala.
With the special compartments.
Oh, we had special, yeah, we had the special compartment, the dash. We had the back seats, you could take that off, pull the bottom part out, then you raise the back up, snap it off the little clamps, take that out. We had the springs removed in the, behind the seat there by it. And we had little racks welded in there so we could mount weapons in there.
Okay, so now you got your weapons, you got your loads, you got your car. How did it come together after that?
Well, just before I left, final instructions was, Chuck told me, he said, "I want you to leave first thing in the morning." He says, "And I don't want you driving at night." He said, "I want you on the highway with a lot of traffic during daytime where nobody pays any attention to you."
Let's go back. Give me a date or approximate date.
I don't remember the approximate date, but I went down like a week before the assassination. I want to say I was in the Dallas area 5 days before the assassination took place.
And what was the purpose of that?
The purpose of that was for me to go to Dallas, look over the area, learn dead-end streets, railroad crossings, time for train crossings. They already knew the regular motorcade route that he would be taking, and they had already looked that over, and they wanted to see if there's any better places, and a lot of people had already decided on. I'm not the one that chose Dealey Plaza, but I was told to look it over very close and look and see if I thought there's any other place better. And I did the whole area from the route they had. All the way through, I had Lee Harvey Oswald with me.
Did you call anybody when you got to Dallas?
I made 2 telephone calls when I got there. I called Charles Nicoletti, told him that I was on the scene and where I was at in case he had to reach me. I turned around and made another phone call. I called David Atlee Phillips. I had a number to call. The call was put through to David Phillips, and he was notified where I was at, because I had not told him in advance that I was going to Dallas, Texas, because he always had to know where I was at because he was my controller. CIA purposes, special operations, or something that might be needed done. We always stayed in contact. We had numbers to call. He said, thank you, and let it go at that. We didn't have any great discussion on the phone. I told him where I was at, the location, and through David Atlee Phillips is the only way that Lee Harvey Oswald could have known where I was at. I was staying at the Lamplighter Inn right there in Mesquite, Texas.
And then the next thing you knew, Lee Harvey Oswald showed up.
The following morning, Lee Harvey Oswald was there. When he knocked on the door, I opened the door and I was shocked to see him because I didn't think anybody knew where I was at except for the other 2 people. Because Charles Nicoletti had never met Lee Harvey Oswald.
You didn't know him?
He did not know him. I had known Lee Harvey Oswald prior to that. I knew him from earlier operation that we was on with David Phillips when I was running semi-automatic 45 caliber submachine guns down to Clinton, Louisiana. They were made, I think they were manufactured by Knoxville Arms. I met Lee Harvey Oswald through David Atlee Phillips. When I got down there, he introduced me to Lee. And he also instructed me that Lee could be trusted and that he was Lee's controller. He made it a statement because I wanted to know who we was dealing with and who I was giving weapons to. He also explained to me that he was Lee Harvey Oswald's controller, the same as he was mine. That he was always in contact with Lee Harvey Oswald. Through common sense tells me the only one that could have sent Lee Harvey Oswald to me was David Atlee Phillips. And so I asked Lee, I says, what the hell you doing here? Because I was shocked, you know. He said, I was advised to drop by and spend some time with you and see if I could help you out. I said, help me out? He said, yes. He says, somebody wants me to show you the area. And I said, okay, just come on in. So he come on in, so we sit down and we talked, and I said, I'll be with you in a few minutes. And I was young and cocky at that time, and I'd just come out of the shower and everything, and I was combing my hair, so I had a camera there, so I told Lee, hey, make a couple of pictures while I'm here in Texas. And so Oswald made a couple of pictures of me, and then he said, let me have the film, I'll get it developed. I said, no. I said, I get the whole roll of film. So that was how I got a couple of pictures made that people have recently asked me about. We drove around Dallas, Lee Harvey Oswald and I, we drove around Dallas up till right before the assassination. I did not see Lee Harvey Oswald on the morning of the assassination, but prior to that, Lee Harvey Oswald had been with me every day. We drove around. He showed me different streets, different areas. He was the one that took me out to the place southeast of Mesquite there, next to a big junkyard. We went out in the field. He said, ain't nobody going to bother you out here, you know, because I wanted to calibrate the scopes for not only for the fireball, but for other weapons as well. And while I was out there firing weapons and ejecting shell casings, Lee was picking them up and holding them in his hand. But I didn't want to leave no casings or nothing behind, and I'm busy firing, so I looked at Lee, grab them casings. And that's what he did. He picked them and he held on to them until we got released. I calibrated my scope, set things up, put the stuff back in the car, and we got back in. We went riding around, and I wanted to know the railroad crossings. I wanted to wait and see what time trains come through. I want to know if there's any passengers, if there was freight trains, they stopped, the track's going to be blocked, the intersection's going to be blocked, dead-end streets, construction work, where every intersection was at, where all the lights were at, how long the lights were, they stayed red. I wanted all these little details. He worked in the book depository stores, what he told me. I was never in that place, but he had time off to come out and spend time with me, and then I would drop him off in the area and he would go somewhere, and I guess that's where he went. I had never asked him where he went, what he done, who he saw.
The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives. The people that had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive So put me in a position I'm in. We'll never let the true facts come above board to the world.
Now, these people are in very high positions, Jack?
Yes.
I had met Johnny Roselli before. I'd met him in Florida, Miami.
Any jobs with him?
Never any jobs with him. I'd talk with him and around, but we never, we was probably involved in some of the same operations or things, but with the same people, but we never went out and did anything together.
Were you aware that Roselli was working with the government in an anti-Castro way?
Yes, I was well aware that Johnny Roselli was involved in the government actions. He was like the liaison between CIA and organized crime, and he was heavily involved in the invasion of Cuba, Bay of Pigs, Chianos Bay, whichever you prefer to call it. But he was also very tight with Frank Sturgis. Frank Sturgis headed up the SAO, which is the secret army organization, what this is all about. And they've had so many different code names for wanting to kill Castro, I couldn't even name half of them. But every time you turned around, somebody had a new operation going.
So tell us about the trip over to Fort Worth.
The trip over to Fort Worth, Johnny Roselli went there to meet somebody by the name of Jack Ruby. I had never knew Jack Ruby, nothing about him. When I got there and pulled into the parking lot, Johnny Roselli told me, he said, let me go in first, see where I'm going to sit, come in, position yourself. And he asked me, he said, are you carrying? And I said, yeah, I'm carrying. He says, good. He says, when I sit down where I'm sitting at, he said, I don't know what may transpire. He said, something could go wrong. He said, but be very alert. He said, keep my backside covered. He said, I won't be in your line of fire. And I said, okay, I pick up open field of fire. I says, wherever I figure I can handle it. I said, I'll go sit down, I'll come in position myself. Johnny Roselli went in and they had like, you could call it a booth at the table sitting there, you know, it wasn't bolted to the floor or nothing. But he sat down in that, and I went in shortly right behind him. I positioned myself at the counter, ordered a cup of coffee, was served, and sit there. And then I sit there and I watched until a short, stocky built man come in, walked over, Johnny got up, they shook hands, they sit down, they talked for a couple of minutes. I seen him take like a half size, like a legal envelope, but only half that size, out of his jacket, and he pushed it across the table to Johnny Roselli. He got up, they shook hands, this man left, Johnny waited maybe 2 minutes. Johnny looked at me, I got up, I walked out of the restaurant, made sure the area's clear, nobody outside in the parking lot. I went over, got in the car, started up, I pulled up by the door, Johnny Roselli walked out, got in the car, and we drove away.
Did you ask him, or did you find out in some way what was in the envelope?
On the way back to Dallas, Johnny and me was riding down the road. He didn't open the envelope right away. We got almost, I think it's Arlington, it's about halfway there. I'm saying halfway, it could be less one way or the other. Been a long time for me. But we was right about Arlington. And Johnny opened the envelope up, started taking stuff out and looking at it. Excuse me. He's looking at it, I'm noticing over, I'm watching over while I'm driving. And he's got these little black wallets, like half-sided, like identification wallets. And he opened them up, and there's identification plates in them, and there's badges in them. At that point, I didn't know what the identification on it was, because he's sitting there looking at it, and I'm not going to lead over. I'm not going to say, give me one of those or anything like that. I'll wait when they want me to know, he'll tell me. And then he opened up a piece of paper and he unfolded it. And there's been a lot of discrepancy over this part now. But Johnny Roselli said they only made one change in the route. And it was a map of Dealey Plaza, the motorcade route. When he looked at it for Dealey Plaza, he said they've only made one alter, one change in it. He said, that's all. And I said, what's that? And he said, they're going to go down Elm Street. But I already had reconned the area, so I knew what he was talking about. And I know everybody said, well, they had the motorcade in the newspaper weeks and months ahead of time. True, they did, but they didn't have that one change.
How did Roselli get to Dallas?
At that point, Roselli, he mentioned to me, Johnny Roselli, we was on the way to Fort Worth. And I asked him, he said, when did you get in? He said, I got in this morning. He said, I got in early this morning. He said, I hadn't been here a couple hours. And I said, how'd you get in? And he said he got lucky. He caught a ride on a plane that's sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. I said, how the hell did you manage that one? He said, I got lucky. He's had somebody there. I didn't ask no more. He didn't elaborate any more than that. I didn't dig any deeper than that. I still don't know that he's there on an abort mission. I have no knowledge of that at this point of the game. Johnny Roselli got out of the car, went back in the hotel. I waited maybe 5 to 7 minutes for Charles Nicoletti to come down. When he got down, Mr. Nicoletti got in the car with me and said, let's go. We took off. I said, where to? He said, take me over by the plaza. We went over, we parked, it's drizzling rain, we get out, we're walking around. This is the first time that Charles Nicoletti has even mentioned to me about an abort team. While we're walking around, Charles Nicoletti asked me, he says, how do you feel about being backup? I said, what do you mean backup? He said, how would you feel about being backup as a shooter for me? I said, what happened to Johnny? What's with Johnny? And he said, Johnny's a little bit paranoid on this. He says, the CIA's called a hit off. He said, well, he doesn't want to go against the orders of the CIA. He said, what he wants to call off. He said, he flew in here as an abort team. He said, they flew a plane here specially with him on it to tell us to call it off. He said, they don't want the hit to go down. And I said, well, what'd you say? Chuck's exact words were, it's going anyway. And I told him, I said, well, what about Johnny? He said, well, Johnny's good. Johnny will be with me, he says, but he's not going to be a shooter. He said, he doesn't want to go against the orders. He said, he's been told he flew in here specifically to abort this assassination. And so I asked him at that point, I said, what'd you say? I said, it's a go. He said, we're going to do it. He said, Jimmy, he says, you know we can't call this off. Only one man can stop it. And he was referring to Sam Giancana. He was the number 2 man at that time. A lot of people's going to tell you he was number 1, but not true. Tony Accardo was still running things. He turned things over. He had Sam Giancana running all this operation and everything, but Tony Accardo was still the man, and he was still calling the shots on whatever went down, whatever was done. I knew of no other crime family being involved. I heard rumors, but do I know if anybody else was involved? No, I do not know if anybody else was involved.
Okay.
They would have been out of character for them to even notify me about that or anybody else. That only stays up in the higher ranks of the family or the people or the crime family, whoever you wish to describe it. About 10:30 a.m., Mr. Nicoletti told me he asked me to be the backup shooter. And that was the first inkling of anything that I would ever be involved in the assassination itself. Prior to that, I was only know the area and transport weapons. It started clearing about 10:45, I believe, the best I can remember. I could be off a few minutes. I know it had been drizzling rain, it was cold, it was damp. Sun didn't come out until after 11 a.m., I believe. And I told Johnny, I said, yes, I'd be honored. I told Mr. Nicoletti, I said, I would be honored to back you on it. I said, anything you ask, I'll do. And he asked me where I thought it would be the best place for him. And I told him the Dow Tech building. Because the Dow Tech building gave him a better shot with him taking the straight run through at a high rate of speed. And evidently, I'm quite certain that they had all this prearranged on that part of it, as that place is his location, and for him and Johnny as far as that goes, because they already had made an arrangements to be admitted into the building. Oh, he didn't check it, he just asked my opinion. He has always questioned me about different things. He used me like a sounding board. Like maybe, you're in business, you're in the office, you might ask one of your people around you, what do you think about this? You don't really care what he thinks, you're just asking for an opinion to see what he thinks. Maybe you overlook something, or maybe somebody's got a better idea than you do at this time of the game. He respected me for my knowledge of weapons, my knowledge of knowing terrain, because I'd been in combat, and the first thing you walk into an area is, to you it's a landscape, to me it's terrain. Because if I walk in and I walk into an ambush, I want to know where the low spots are, the high spots are, where all the coverage is. I got to know where I can get my rear end down so I don't get shot off. You got to have a place to go to ground in a hurry. You cannot afford to stand around and be looking around and wondering, gee, where can I go from here? You do, you're dead. You got to think. That's why you take all this training in the military. You're trained not to think, but to react. Mr. Nicoletti asked me, said, if you back me up, Jimmy, he says, where do you think it'd be the best spot for you? I said, well, the spot I like best is up on the grassy knoll behind that stockade fence. He says, why there? I said, I got the railroad yard for cover. I said, my clothes, I can turn my jacket inside out. I said, it's plaid on the inside. It looks like railroad workers. Somebody out there wearing a flannel shirt. Nobody's going to pay no attention to me. I said, I can go over there. I can walk around a piece of chalk, walk up and down by boxcars, cross the railroad tracks, look at things. I'd just be another worker. Nobody'd even look at me. And he said, okay. He says, what weapon are you going to use over there? And I told him, Chuck, I said, well, what's the situation? Chuck said, we're going for a headshot now. I said, this I understand. I realize this. He said, you're not going to fire unless it becomes a necessity. He says, if I miss, he said, then it's going to be up to you. He said, but you don't fire, he said, unless I miss. He said, it's going to be your call at that point. He said, so you got to be very alert on this. And I told him, don't worry about me. I said, I got it, boss. And he said, what are you going to use? I said, I'm going to use the fireball. And he looked at me and says, why? Why the fireball? Now the fireball, for people who don't know what a fireball is, it's like a cut-down rifle. It's actually basically this long. The weapon was well ahead of its time. This was one of the prototypes the agency had got a hold of that had been manufactured by Remington. Now a lot of people are going to tell you that this particular weapon was not available at that time, but this weapon was available. It didn't go on sale until a few years later. But this weapon had been manufactured as early as 1961. We had a lot of trouble with the barrel blowing up on it, used too big a round on it or something, overloads in it. A lot of problems with it, but they finally reinforced the barrel. We got it where it worked pretty good. And Chuck asked me, he says, why the fireball? So you've only got one shot, because the Remington Fireball 222 is a single shot bolt action pistol. You can mount a scope on it. So, well, if I'm gonna wait until you're through, I said, I'm only gonna get one shot anyway, so it don't really matter. I said, because I'll never get a chance for a second shot if I wait until the last possible moment. He said, okay. He said, it's your call.
Where'd you get hold of a prototype weapon like the XP-100?
It was given to me by David Phillips. I'd received this maybe a year prior, 8 months, a year prior to the assassination. The gun had been used twice before on assassinations, but nobody like a president or nothing. But it was good for using. You want to get into a close place area or somewhere, somebody might say, well, why use a pistol? Well, anybody that knows their weapons, this particular piece of sub is very accurate, it's up to 100 yards. At 100 feet, I'm talking about we're shooting now from the grassy knoll down to the highway to the street there, we're talking roughly 30, 35 yards. We're only talking 100 feet. This is like shooting fish in a barrel, and especially a little 3-power scope on it. But the weapon had been used before, but you could put it in a briefcase, you could walk anywhere with it, nobody pay any attention to it. The case that I had set up, I had a little loading press inside for it, in case I had to manufacture anything. I had a little holder for all the special rounds that were in it. Everything was packed in foam rubber inside. The case was watertight, waterproof.
What did the case look like?
The case was black. It was like an oversized briefcase, basically speaking. And handling all the little metal flaps on it, for locking it up. You could lock the case, but I wasn't concerned about locking it. But the thing is, you could take it, you could go anywhere, you look like a businessman with it. And I felt that was the best weapon to go with. And so Mr. Nicoletti agreed with me on it. He said, okay, it's your call, Jimmy. Now then, I did not drop Charles Nicoletti or Johnny Roselli off at the Dowtech building. They got into the building, they were there on their own. I told them where the car would be, it's his car, he knows his car. He knows what my job is. They'll be in the car, he'll be in the front seat, Johnny will be in the back seat, I'll get under the driver's wheel. I'll set my briefcase between the front and the back seat, we'll drive away. After I took Charles Nicoletti back to the hotel, I went back to the plaza, secured the car, got my briefcase out with a gun in it, with a fireball in it. I went into the railroad yard. I secured that over there, put it away so nobody see it. Reversed my jacket inside out. I'd taken my hat, great fedora like, and my jacket was a great poplin. We had these car jackets back then. They were like waist length, not a short jacket, but they kind of come down a little bit. There's no car jacket like, made out of a material that they no longer use. It was called poplin. You might remember that material. The poplin material, grayish color, had a shine to it. Excuse me, that's what the jacket was like that I was wearing, a pair of gray pants with it. And I reversed the jacket and it had the offset plaids in it, like, kind of like checkered on the inside. When I turned it over, it looked like one of the old gray flannel shirts that we used to wear out, when you was doing work in the yard or something or other. Excuse me. And I walked around the railroad yard and I was waiting for the time to pass.
time was coming on. And when I heard the roar of the crowd, I'd been over by the fence, and I got there a few minutes early. And I'd look up, and I'd look over the fence, and I would looking for people. What I was looking for was not to see who I knew, but I was looking for people that would be carrying a bulge like up under the arm. I'm looking for somebody with a weapon. I'm looking for security people, cops, undercover, security, off-duty, whoever might be carrying a weapon, bulge along their hip, behind their back, like I say, under the arm and a shoulder holster. I'm looking for these little bulges. Most people don't pay no attention to that, but this is what I'm looking for. But then my amazement, I recognized several people. A lot of people say Jack Ruby was never there, but he was there before the motorcade got there. I know that for a fact. But I was that close. I'm looking at the back side of him, and I'm pretty sure that was him. I stayed away from the fence. I stayed basically in the yard, walk over the fence, look over it, spend a minute, then walk back away again. But I was observing the area.
Were you smoking cigarettes that morning?
I had spoken that day. Careless. I probably stepped on several cigarette butts and left them there. Most of them Pall Mall. It was very muddy. Let me put it this way. I a couple of times even took my shoes, put them up on the little concrete ledge there and scraped the mud off the bottom of them.
The gunmetal gray limousine, blue and gray. The President and Mrs. Kennedy seated on the back seat. Governor and Mrs. Connolly on the second seats or jump seats. And then the official driver and Secret Service men are in the front seat. It will go Mockingbird Lane to Lemon Avenue, then travel south on Lemon to Turtle Creek, Cedar Springs, through the downtown area on Harwood to Maine, west on Maine to Houston, through the Triple Underpass to Stemmons Freeway, then on to the Trade Mart.
The President's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the Trade Mart.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street. Stand by just a moment, please. Put me on, Phil. Put me on. The motorcade is coming by here. The presidential car coming up now. We know it's the presidential car. You see Mrs. Kennedy's pink suit. There's a Secret Service man, spread eagle, over the top of the car. We understand Governor and Mrs. Connolly are in the car with President and Mrs. Kennedy. We can't see who has been hit, if anybody's been hit, but apparently something is wrong here. Something is terribly wrong. I'm in behind the motorcade, trying to follow them. It looks as though they're going to Parkland Hospital. And just now we've received reports here at Parkland that Governor Connolly was shot in the upper left chest, and the first unconfirmed reports say the president was hit in the head. That's an unconfirmed report that the president was hit in the head. A priest has been ordered. Emergency supplies of blood also being rushed to the hospital.
I was where you got the concrete steps that go down by the pergola there, and between the pergola and the stockade fence, you got a set of concrete steps that go down. I was to the right of those. I'm gonna say 8 to 10 feet down there. There was a tree branch that hung right over me. I was behind that, kind of give me a little camouflage. This was just a few minutes before the motorcade got there. Something happens and I have to shoot. You know, I don't want to have to shoot anybody else unless it becomes a necessity. So I walk away from the fence. I come back over, secured everything, got it ready. I could hear the rumble, the people murmuring, so you know the motorcade's approaching. So then I got ready, opened it up. I'm holding the Remington fireball down below the fence at this point. Motorcade come down, I believe that's Main Street there, come down on Houston, turn back around on the Elm there, and come down that little side drive there. Oh, when it come down and made its first right, that's when I brought the weapon up. And then I'm over the fence, and as they come down, made the turn on down there, that's when I started focusing through the scope and following the car. As shots started ringing out, I started counting the shots, but I'm not counting like 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm counting them miss, 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 because I know we're going for the headshot. So I don't care how many rounds are being fired as long as we get a headshot. But I'm hearing the shots being fired, and I'm counting them as a miss, miss. And that's the only thing I'm concerned about. I've got this sign there for the Simmons Freeway that is fixing to come into my field of fire. As far as I can see at this point, the President has not been hit in the head at this time. I've seen the body lurch. I know he's been hit. How serious, I don't know. But my last instructions was we're going for a headshot. If you have to take a shot, take it, but don't fire unless it's a necessity, unless you really have to. He said, Jimmy, don't fire unless you have to. We want everything from the backside. I'm not asking why. Okay, whatever you say. At this point, as it starts to approach and come behind that freeway sign, and I've already been instructed not to hit anybody but Kennedy because they didn't want Jackie getting hurt or anybody. I'm fixing to lose my field of fire. And at this point, either I shoot or I can put it in a suitcase and leave, one or the other. I took the shot. I fired one shot only. Well, I was aiming for his right eye, which to me is the left side of his head looking head on. But for him, it would be his right eye. And once I pull the trigger, I'm right in on it, and it's almost like looking 6 feet away through the scope. As I squeezed, take off my round, his head moved forward, I missed, and I coming right along the temple, just right behind the eye. No. All right, well, I'm not sure because I can't see the penetration. I know I hit him right here. I know I hit behind the eye. I got my ratings as marksman. I'm a good shooter. Always was. And I'm not bragging on myself, don't get me wrong, but that's what got me my start with David Phillips because of something that I did in the service, and I made a mark there, and it's on record and it's recorded for headshots for what I did and the things that I did. But anyway, to make a long story short, as I was preparing to squeeze off my round, Kennedy's head moved forward just as I squeezed. It was already in process, the head started forward. To me, what I believe is, and I did not see, let me clear the fact now, I never saw Mr. Nicoletti shoot Kennedy, but I know he was the man in the Dow Tech building, the man supposed to be doing the shooting. Therefore, the head started forward. As far as I'm concerned, Mr. Nicoletti hit him at that point. As I squeezed off my round, the head started forward, I hit him and blew the head backwards. I didn't hit the rear, the exit blew out. Partially, most of it on his right side, I guess, back there where the section come right out, part of the back of the skull. When I took my shot, I knelt back down to the briefcase, I ejected the one casing in there, I picked up another live round, put it in, and closed the bowl on it. I took this shell casing as it come out to the briefcase, I put it in my mouth, tasted the sulfur from it. Love the taste of sulfur, by the way. Closed the briefcase up, and as I stood up, I did something I shouldn't have done, but I did do it. I took the shell casing, I bit down on it. I took it out and I looked at it, and I set it on the stockade fence. And there was an indentation from my teeth on the shell casing, on the ridge, by the orifice. And I left it sitting on the stockade fence there. You gotta understand, when you're young, you're cocky, everything is indestructible to you, you know. Nothing can go wrong. And you gotta be a strong believer in all that. I mean, you know, you're infallible. Chuck, Mr. Nicoletti would laugh at me when I do things like that, and hey, say calling card, trait, whatever you want to do. He used to laugh at me over it. He told me, Jimmy, just you do the job, you do it, and forget about it. Oh, if he would have known I did that in the Daily Plaza, right now he's probably turning over in his grave for me doing something that stupid.
Jimmy, I'm sure you're aware that they have found two 22 shell casings.
I've heard that. I've heard that.
Have you got any speculation, any idea of where a second 222 shell casing is?
I have no idea whatsoever. I fired one shot only. I ejected the shell casing. Mine was a Remington cartridge, manufactured prior to 1963. I bit it, I set it on the stockade fence. I had no empty shell casings for a 222 with me at all.
This shell casing, by the way, was found not in the exact spot where you left it, a little bit further at the other side of the fence.
Well, I look at it this way. Whoever was searching, somebody up there looking, anybody could have looked at it, they could have thrown it over there, somebody could have stepped on it. Maybe somebody didn't want it found, who knows? They didn't want to carry anything away from there in case they got stopped. Maybe they just stepped on it, buried it in the ground. I don't really know. I know where I put it. That's all I know.
Was there anyone in your vicinity?
There was nobody behind that stockade fence but me at that point. Nobody. All the time I was there, I was alone. But in front of the fence, the two people that I was mostly concerned about was a couple of guys wearing suits. They were up there on top of the grassy knoll there, and they were a little ways in front, maybe 15, 20 feet away, whatever, you know. I did not know who they were. They're between the fence and the sidewalk, between me and the motorcade. They're on top, they're at the top of the knoll there. They're kind of like looking over everybody and watching people. And this had me a little bit concerned, because I don't know who they are. At this stage of the game, well, I'm going to take my shot. I got the 45 ready. If I got to, like I say, I don't want to shoot nobody unless I have to. At this point, and I've checked them, the shoulder holsters, the backside, I saw no bulges. As far as I knew, they wasn't packing. So I figured maybe they're just a couple of businessmen. Just, you know, people want to see the president go by. A lot of people are strange that way. Everybody wants to go see celebrities go by. But I took the shot, and as I was walking away, and like I seen Jackie crawl out there, motorcycle cop, he threw his bike down. He jumped off, but as he come running in a little zigzag or whatever you want to call it, like he's really into combat or something, he's still a wide open target. Anybody could shoot him. He's got his pistol out. And he's running up the hole there. The two men that at the fence there, seen two guys with the suits, they go over and they open up identifications. So I have to figure these are probably my cover that I've never been informed about. And I was told not to worry. They stopped him and he never came no farther. He went back down off the knoll. I was told, Charles Nicoletti told me, he said, when you take the shot, he said, just walk away. He told me, don't run. He said, just walk away natural, Jimmy. He said, don't show no attention. I told him, I said, don't worry. And I had no intention of breaking out of there running, but like I say, if somebody comes at me, I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to leave the area. If I shoot somebody else, that's what I'll do at this point of the game. There was nobody behind the stockade fence with me. I am the only person back there. Anybody else back there is over in the railroad yard by the trains. Right before the assassination, there was nobody standing next to me. Oh, as I'm walking away, I've got my briefcase, gun case in my right hand. I've got my left hand over by my coat pocket. I got a Colt 45 there. I've got it fully loaded with 6 rounds in it. It's ready to go if I need it. I've already reversed my jacket. When I picked up the gun case, I reversed my jacket, no plaid side. I got the poplin gray material on the outside. I took the fedora I had shoved down in the sleeve of it, snapped it out, put it back on my head, and I walked away. Carrying the briefcase and my 45 inside my coat pocket. I had one thing on my mind. Anybody that approaching me with the determination to stop me, to question me, detain me, whatever you want to call it, or anything else. All I want to do now is reach my destination, which is the car, put the case in the back seat there on the floor, like I Chuck and me already have figured out. I'm going to get in the car, start it up, drive away.
Was the car empty when you got there?
No, sir. When I got to the car, Charles Nicoletti was in the front seat, Johnny Roselli was in the back seat.
And
there's only 2 seats in the front. We had the bucket seats in it.
So as soon as you got in the car, you just started up?
As soon as I got in the car, opened the door, set the case in the back, behind the front seat, got right in the car, lit the ignition, and gone.
Anybody say anything at that point?
Nobody said nothing to me. The only thing that was said to me was, Mr. Nicoletti asked me, he said, Jimmy, don't you think you overreacted? I said, what do you mean? He said, do you think you fired too fast? And I told him, I said, I was fixing to lose my field of fire. Either I shoot then or I put it in a brief, put it in my gun case and I leave. I said, I had one choice. I said, at this point, you told me we were going for a headshot. There's been no headshot. I said, I'm just following my orders. I said, I didn't want to explain to you why I didn't shoot. And that was the end of it. And he told me, he said, at this intersection, he says, make a left and pull up at the gas station. We get down there, he says, we're getting out, we're getting in another car there. And I said, okay. I pulled out, parked, they got out of the car. He said, I'll see you in Chicago. And that was the only thing that was said. I took it as criticism, naturally. The only thing was he asked me if I thought I overreacted.
Do you think Lee Harvey Oswald fired any shots that day?
Lee Harvey Oswald never fired a shot. And if anybody knows what a paraffin test is, and we have actual court documents on where Lee Harvey Oswald was given a paraffin test by the Dallas Police Department, and on this document it plainly states, deceased J.D. Tibbet, deceased John F. Kennedy, suspect Lee Harvey Oswald. And he took a paraffin test, his face, his hand, his arm, I guess the side of his neck, and the only trace of any nitrates from powder burns or powder suspicions was in the palm of his hand. And anybody that goes to a firing range as far as weapons knows if you fire a .38 revolver or any type of revolver, the blow bite is going to come back across this part of your hand and your wrist. The only reason he had those nitrous in the palm of his hand is he was holding spent shell casings when I calibrated the scope.
Well, what's the situation? Nobody told me. No, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet. The first thing I knew about was when the newspaper reported in the hall asking that question.
You have to. Nobody said what?
Sir?
You have to. Nobody said what? Okay, we can't hear you back.
But Lee Harvey Oswald, it's like I say, that's a court document. And I don't believe anybody rigged that one up.
I work in that building.
Were you in the building at the time?
Naturally, if I work in that building, yes, sir.
Back up, man.
No, they're taking me in because of the fact that I lived in the Soviet Union. Did you shoot the president? I lived in the Soviet Union. I'm just a patsy.
Tippit killing is not related to the murder of Kennedy, if you want to get right down to it. The Tippit killing is related to Oswald, because Oswald was the one that was supposed to die, not Tippit. Tippit is one of these people that just stopped the wrong person, that got caught in the wrong place. And when he went to ask a party something, and you've got an officer in Round Lake Beach by the name of when he goes out and gives his tours and he talks, he tells people how careful they have to be, these young recruits, because you never know who you're stopping. Somebody should have given that talk to J.D. Tippit, because he stopped the wrong party and got him killed. The party that killed J.D. Tippit, they wasn't there to kill J.D. Tippit. They had parked a little ways from Oswald's boarding house. They went down there to kill Oswald. They wanted to kill Oswald. They didn't want to make a big spectacle out of it. They wanted to silence him at that point of the game, before anybody can get to him. But I guess, I don't know if Lee got spooked or whatever it was, but then he went to the theater, and he knew where he was going when he left there, because he was supposed to meet the controller there, which is David Atlee Phillips. He was the one that's supposed to be at the theater, as far as I understand. The party that shot J.D. Tippit was someone else that had been brought in. I'm not sure where he came from. I didn't even know this party was on location. But after that, I'm already back at the hotel. When the party comes up, somebody knocks on my door. I picked up my .45, walked over the door, pulled a little curtain back. I kind of look out the door to see who's there. And I see this party standing there that I recognize, that I know. And I open the door, and my neighbor says, "What the hell are you doing here?" He said to stop by, "Got a problem." I said, "You got a problem?" And I'm looking at him, you know. I'm still trying to register. How does he even know I'm here? Nobody knows I'm here. You know, this is getting to be a habit. Like everybody knows Jimmy's in town. And he said, I had to burn a cop. And I said, well, you done what you had to do. He said, I missed Oswald. And I said, well, what are you doing here? You burn a cop. He said, you going to take this and get rid of it? I said, hell no, that's yours. You take and get rid of it. You just shot a cop. I don't want his weapon. Don't you get rid of it. That's yours. Don't get out of here. Somebody knocks on my door at this point, I'm ready to start shooting again, And he said, okay, and he said something another, I don't know exactly what it was, and he went out, he got in his vehicle, and he took off. I don't even know what he was driving, because as soon as he walked out that door, I closed the door and pulled the curtain back. Yeah, I don't want to know anybody. I don't want to know anything whatsoever.
You're not naming this party.
No, I'm not naming this party.
What is the reason for that?
What is the reason for it? Well, I don't know if he's still alive or not, but late as 1991, when I caught this case, I know for a fact the party was still alive and in good health, okay? But, it has, he didn't shoot Kennedy, he shot a cop. Everybody wants a cop killer, okay? But this guy's gone, I don't know who he is. I mean, I know who he is, but I'm not gonna tell nobody who he is. He's gone, that's out of there. I have no idea where he's at. I don't wanna know where he's at. All I understand is this, a party that I know that come by my motel room told me he had to burn a cop. The cop he burned was J.D. Tippit. That was the only cop killed in Dallas that day, so it had to be the one that he burned. Anyway, this party that was there, that killed J.D. Tippit, he was brought in at a last minute notice that he had to be on standby. And wherever Phillips went, he usually kept several people around that he could use, people that he needed. Whether he needs them or not, they're gonna be available. They always had, what are you gonna call them, contract agents, operatives, co-operatives, or whatever. He's got people that he can use. If he needs something done, he can pick up a phone and have it initiated at a moment's notice. This party was evidently there on standby because he did not live in that area. That's why I was shocked to see him in my motel room. So evidently they took care of it that way. You probably couldn't get the FBI to admit to it, but when a couple of their people forced their way into Stateville, I was offered all kind of deals and all kind of agreements if I would not give an interview on John F. Kennedy before. You know, I told them to do what they got to do. They did, sorry to my regret, but the thing is this, I'm not going to give anybody up. I'm not going to put nobody in prison. I have never went to court and testified against anybody. And I've had a lot of deals offered in my time. I've told them, put me in jail. I went to jail. I've had cops tell me this and that. You know, we're going to lock you up. We've got you dead bang. I've had prosecutors come in and tell me, you're dead cold. Plead guilty. From what I'm looking at here, looks like part of the flap on the side is missing. But I don't see very much in this picture here, the back of the head missing. What I'm looking at here is a lot of hair. What's my conclusion? That ain't the right picture. That's my conclusion. You want my opinion on it, that's not the right picture. The photo that I just looked at, in my opinion, that's a fake picture. That is not the real picture. A lot of people might say you can't see nothing through a scope, but I'm going to tell you something. When you see something burst, his head like a watermelon, you're going to see pieces of stuff flying in different directions. People are going to be splattered by it. Boy, I looked over the fence and I saw Jackie Kennedy crawling out on the back end of the car, the limo. At this point, I got to figure, well, she's going to be picking up a piece of his skull, because a lot of people say you can't see nothing through a scope like this. But what you're going to see is like, and I saw it, the head explode. I saw the backside come out. I seen whoop brains or whatever you want to call it, tissue, hair, the whole thing going everywhere, just a spray. And if anybody displeased, just go out and shoot somebody and look through a scope while you're doing it and watch. I think one of the agents, probably one of the Secret Service agents, riding on the back of the car. I'm only assuming that I would say they probably got splattered because there was stuff everywhere. But one of the other things I want to point out about Remington 222 Fireball, it's a high-velocity pistol. The round travels approximately 3,180 feet per second. Now then, for this type of weapon, there is very little recoil. Now, a lot of people say there's a lot of recoil, it's going to jump, you can't see nothing. And I've had a lot of criticism over the years over this here. So I'd like for somebody to go out to firing range somewhere, gun store, and take one of these particular types of weapons that carry a 222 round and fire. You're going to find very little recoil, especially when you're using an extended barrel weapon with a scope on it. You have to wait there to hold it down. It's not jumping and bouncing. You're not shooting a 44 or 45.
Did the motorcade ever come to a stop?
The motorcade, the best of my recollection to me and my mind, and everything is slowed down at this point. When the first shot went off, it's like it stopped. It's just like it slowed down almost to crawl or barely moving, or maybe it even stopped. I'm not really sure on that point. I know I was waiting. It kept moving. It had to have been moving, but very, very slow. Because I'm waiting for it to get up the sign. I'm waiting for something to happen so I don't have to shoot. Not that I'm afraid to, but if I don't have to, I don't want to. But like I say, when the car got even almost up to that Simmons Freeway sign there, and that was one of the most, and ain't like these new ones they got today with nice little skinny metal posts and a little sign. These here had, you know, made it, I guess, the wooden legs on, or what do you want to call it? The post, the hell, it was wood. Anyway, I had my shot. It's either I shoot now or right now. I took my shot.
Were you nervous in any way?
Was I nervous? No. If I'd have been nervous, I'd have been shaking. I couldn't have made the shot. A lot of people may find this hard to believe, but you've got to understand something. First time you go into the field of fire, when you go into a firefight in combat, you might be nervous or skittish. But after you've been initiated into the field of fire, whatever you want to call it, combat, firefights, a lot of people got different names for it, skirmishes, you get over it. And, you know, and to me, and a lot of people are really going to think I'm probably sick, but when you got into a firefight, that was the ultimate high. I've never used drugs in my life. A firefight to me, being in the service, that was one of the greatest things there was. It was the ultimate high. And at this point, when you're stalking down somebody, and this particularly, they stopped me from hunting animals altogether. When I was young, I used to love to go shoot deer, rabbit, squirrel, whatever I could get, pheasant. But after you went into the jungles and you've hunted man and you stalked a man down and you've hunted a man down on equal terms where he can kill you, you have no desire to go shoot a defenseless animal. My impression of Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald is a very quiet type person, secluded, very private. Mild-mannered, you might say. He wasn't one that he didn't do a lot of boasting or bragging. He didn't do a lot of cavalrying. I mean, what he did, he kept to himself. Lee Harvey Oswald, as far as I'm concerned, I like the guy. Very intelligent, very intelligent. When we got into certain subjects, I mean, he could make me look like a dummy, let's face it.
So he's a lot better educated than...
Oh, he's a lot better educated than what people say. Lee Harvey Oswald, he had very good self-control because he had a little scar up on his lip. And I asked him one time how he got it, and he told me it was in the Marine Corps. Somebody hit him with the butt of a rifle up here. I thought, you must have ripped their guts out or some ripped their ass out. He said, no, he said, I didn't do that. So what do you mean? He said, it's an accident. He said, I didn't get upset about it. But that's the type of person he was. He was calm, he was collect.
Capable of killing someone?
No. Lee Harvey Oswald, everybody's capable of killing somebody. Let's face it, you got your back to the wall. But is Lee Harvey Oswald a killer? No, he wasn't an assassin, no. Lee Harvey Oswald, when I say he wasn't a killer or anything like that, Lee Harvey Oswald, he had it all up here. Very, very intelligent. I almost said he had a good IQ. And he held a top secret security clearance. And there's another thing I'd like to state and get on record. They talk about Lee Harvey Oswald, all this and that, and him running off to Russia. The only way Lee Harvey Oswald could have went to Moscow. He held a top secret security clearance when he was on the base in Japan. You hold a top secret security clearance, and people can go check this anywhere. In the days of the Cold War, you did not jump on a plane and fly to a communist country, and I don't care who you was. You had to be cleared for it. The only people that could have engineered that for him to go to Moscow was the CIA. And the Russians were so scared of Lee Harvey Oswald over there, not fearful of what he'd do to them. They knew what was going down. They gave him a place to stay, and he wound up marrying Marie over there. And they was too happy to put him on a plane to send him back to the U.S.
Gave him money?
Yeah.
What was going down then? What was the mission for Lee Harvey Oswald?
I have no idea what the mission was, but he went over there for some reason. I never asked him. He never told me. I never asked him why he went to Russia. But you cannot tell me that he was disgruntled with this country and he wanted to go over there and be a member of the Communist Party. There's no way. He took a cover and he went, and they just wouldn't buy the story.
Would you describe him as patriotic?
I would say Lee, he did a lot of work for this country. Everything he did was based basically on this country. He was not a traitor. I don't care what anybody says. All those research-based, everybody can say all they want. I know Lee Harvey Oswald. He wasn't that type of person. He wasn't a traitor. I went into my room. When I got in the room, Zita went in, sat down, relaxed, got a drink of water, stripped all my clothes off, went in, took me a shower. Come out of the shower, I took some wax that I brought along for this particular purpose. And if anybody wants to try this, it can be pretty painful. But I knew that I would have redstone on me here and on the side of my face from firing the weapon and across my hand and wrist. Took hot wax and I poured it on myself and let it cool so it cut into the pores on the side of my face. And after a few minutes, I peeled it off, which would remove all the nitrates from any gunpowder. I went back into the shower and showered again, then showered, finished up with a good cold one, but felt like I was kind of on fire and burning. When I got out of the shower, dried off, then I put a lotion over everything to cool the burning sensation, and then I got dressed. Once it got dark, I went out to the car. Nobody was around. Make sure everybody was inside doing whatever they're doing in their motel rooms. Opened the trunk up. I took the weapon out of the trunk. And when I'd gotten out of the car earlier, I'd taken the briefcase, the gun case from my fireball, and I'd already taken that into the hotel. I went inside, had one weapon I took in, cleaned it, got it ready to put back in the car. I waited till after midnight. I went back out to the vehicle, got in, pulled the back seat out, took the top part off the back, put the gun case, the gun back in the rack, the rifle. I secured my fireball, put the gun case in there, closed everything back up, and went back in the hotel. I went to sleep. I got up the next morning at first light, went down the road. There is a restaurant down the road, there a little ways off on the right-hand side as you're coming back east. Restaurant, coffee shop not too far from there, maybe a mile and a half down the road, something like that anyway, best I can remember. I stopped there, had me some coffee, breakfast, got in the car and I left. I drove back to the southern part of Illinois. When I got to the southern part of Illinois, it was starting to get dusk, getting late. Pulled off at a motel there. As you got back in Illinois, I can't remember the name of it. I remember it was like a blue and white one. I want to say Southern something another, like a truck stop, a lot of trucks there. I went in, got a room, and I stayed overnight there. The next morning, I went out, got in the car, proceeded to Chicago.
Do you have any proof of what you've told us in regards to the Kennedy assassination?
When it gets down to this part about a lot of people ask a lot of different questions about things, the one thing that I could verify right now, which cannot be made public, is the ledger, diary, ledger, whichever you prefer to call it. Spoke with some papers and things that Charles Nicoletti gave to me before he was killed. things got pretty active here. Sam Giancana was the first one to be killed, and that was in 75. And I'm not sure, maybe September. It was 75. Go there. He was killed. The night he was killed, Johnny Roselli was in town. But I saw Johnny Roselli at the airport. And when Johnny Roselli come in, we didn't talk or anything. I was there to pick somebody else up that come in on that flight just by coincidence. And I was picking up a party that I did a lot of work for, collecting money and things. But anyway, I seen Johnny. We just nodded at each other. He had another man with him. When they left, we was right behind them. They got in their vehicle outside. We took off. We went down the road. We went down River Road, proceeding south. And the kid with me said the only place Johnny could be going would be going over to see Sam. Fifth Avenue on River Road there in Belmont, they had a place they called the Blue Horizon. Johnny pulled in there momentarily, let the guy with him out. Whoever this guy was, he wasn't going to Sam's house because Sam didn't like a lot of people coming to his house, and if he didn't know them, they wasn't going to get in anyway. And Johnny went on. I went my way, Johnny Roselli went his. Johnny Roselli, the next morning I woke up, Sam Giancana had been executed, gangland style. When he was killed, bells went off for me. Johnny Roselli had to be the one to do it. Because he was there. I know he went to Sam's house that night. The following year, Johnny Roselli was killed. When Johnny Roselli was killed, the party, figures the same guy that he probably dropped off. There was 2 people killed down there in Tampa, St. Pete, there in that area. That was got rid of at the same time. One was Johnny Roselli. The other one, another party unknown, whoever it was. I don't remember the name of him now, but evidently it was a friend of his that had traveled to Chicago with him. I figured he knew something, and somebody took him out too, because they knew that Johnny Roselli, what he had done, okay? This guy, he might have told this guy knew, they got rid of him. And when it comes down to it, the crime family did not have Sam Giancana killed. I don't know who killed him except for Johnny Roselli there, but I believe that the government ordered the contract killing on Sam Giancana. I believe the government is the one that killed Johnny Roselli to shut him up so he couldn't talk.
All of this was about the time of the House Select Committee on Assassination?
All of it, yes.
So
the following year.
That was the tie-in?
Pardon me?
Roselli,
Definitely.
Giancana?
But anybody that knew Sam Giancana, they knew Sam Giancana would have never talked. He'd have went to jail. He'd have kept his mouth shut. He would not talk. The following year, Johnny Roselli, he got killed. That silenced him. And then, March 29th, this is the night that Charles Nicoletti was killed. And he was supposed to go testify before some committee. And he was killed at the Golden Horns right there in Melrose Park there on North Avenue and Manheim Road, the Golden Horns restaurant. And I thought at first maybe somebody in the family had hit him because we knew there was trouble. And right before his death, he'd given me this package. He told me, he said, this is my life insurance. He said, if I need it, I want you to have it, you can always get to it. He said, and if anything happens to me, he says, you might need it someday. So what he gave me was, I took it and I went out, got me some cheesecloth. I wrapped a little package up and I put a little metal box. I went out and I dug a hole and I buried it. Put it away and covered it all up. So about a week and a half later, you know, Chuck was killed. After he was killed, right after that, maybe another week, 10 days later, so I walk out of the club. It's a nice night out, you know. So I walk down to the corner and the car's coming down off the side street onto Lake Street. Well, it comes up just like, you know, rocking for a Hollywood stop, comes up the stop sign and stops, hits the brakes and kind of rocks back. I step back up on the crib so I don't get run over. I'm thinking nothing about it, just nonchalantly, you know. The next thing I know is somebody sticks something out the window and I got sprayed in the face. And I hit the ground. I don't even remember falling down. When I come to, I was strapped up, tied up, blindfolded, and I went through a pretty severe torture test. And all this here has been verified also. What they wanted the ledger. They never got it. When they got through with me, my legs were still taped together, my arms and wrists were still taped behind my back. They threw me out of a car out there in Elmhurst. People found me, they called the cops up, police come out there. Some of them recognized me. Everybody in town, as long as I'd been missing, everybody figured I was dead.
When they threw you out of the car, do you think they thought you were dead?
Oh, they thought I was dead, definitely. Otherwise, they'd have never left me alive. That's why I've always blamed the FBI for it. Because the family or the CIA, they would have a couple of holes in the back of my head and 4 or 5 inside the mouth through the palate, gangland execution style. These people, they didn't do that. When evidently they figured I was dead, they didn't even bother to untape me nothing. I was still naked. They threw me out of the car in the nude. Ankles still taped, hands behind my back, everything still taped up. And they never got the ledger. It's still missing. Not missing, I know where it is. And let me clarify one thing. Nobody in the world knows where that is but me. It's right here. Nobody else can ever take them to it.
Still your insurance policy.
It's still it. And if I die, all those secrets in that book go to my grave with
now,
me.
what's all in that little package? There's a little box,
It's
right?
a little box, little package inside cheesecloth, inside a metal box.
What's in there?
What is in there? In this side, this ledger, what they want. I got a few other things in there, but what they want is this ledger, because it's got just about basically every murder that was carried out in the Chicagoland area. It's got dates, it's got names, figures of money, different things, reasons why, people who ordered it.
Anything in there about the JFK hit?
You got, there's a couple little lines in there. It's got JFK down, it's got the date on it. Basically, that's it. I'm in prison for a specific reason. When I come out of the federal prison, I did a federal stretch and I was out for a little while. People started trying to kill me. When they started trying to kill me the first time, I was at along Quentin Road and Rollins Road in Round Lake Beach, shortly past midnight, driving a little Chevy Chevette. And the cops had been harassing me there. They knew who I was. Every time they see me, they'd handcuff me, get me out of the car, and my papers blow out. They'd throw all my stuff down the street. But this particular night, I pull up the stoplight there. I'm on Quentin Road, fixing to make a right-hand turn on Rollins Road. I'm staying with my aunt and uncle at this time. They're about 2 blocks down from there. I looked up in the rearview mirror, and I seen a car pulling up behind me with no lights in the next lane. I thought, shit, it's cops again. You know, I'm gonna get hassled again. It's not a squad car number, but I just figured it's detectives, you know. As it pulls up alongside of me, I'm looking in the mirror, sitting by the door, the little door mirror on the side, and I see an SMG come up. What anybody don't know what that is, it's a small machine gun, automatic weapon. As I see it coming out of the window, I roll across the seat, hit the door, hit the ground, roll back up against the rocker panel of the car. They put 30 holes in my car. Full clip they put into it. As they were pulling away, I come up off the ground with my piece, and I got up about 4 rounds. I'm on federal parole at that point. I'm not supposed to be carrying a weapon, but you never find me without a weapon. I got off 4 rounds, took the back window out. They kept going. I jumped back in my car, took a right on the Rollins Road, went down to Grove Avenue, pulled into the house at my aunt and uncle's at 1620 Grove. Went in there and got the tarp from my uncle out of the garage and put it over the car so they couldn't see the bullet holes. That was the first attempt on my life. I got out of federal prison in '88. This year's late '89, early '90, I guess. And when they started trying to kill me on the street, that was the first attempt on my life in the free world, as I call it. Next day, I went to see somebody down in the city, and I went up and I asked him a specific question, if we had a problem. I said, I went and I did my federal time. I said, I got busted on the chop shops. I didn't take nobody down with me. I said, I went, kept my mouth shut. I didn't testify. I didn't give nobody up. I took the conviction. I done my time. What's the problem? We got a problem, let me know. And he told me, he said, Jimmy, he says, he always called me Jimmy boy. He said, Jimmy boy, he says, come down, come down. He said, listen to me. He said, you got no problem with us. He said, you did your thing. He said, hey, you didn't have the problem. When you was down, you got money, looked after certain people for you, took care of your family. You had no problems. When you come out, you went to the restaurant, he said, everybody parked, everybody come by to see you. He said, we dropped a lot of envelopes. He said, you have money when you come out. Everybody looked after you when you come out. That's respect. Don't think we're after you. Said, whatever you've done, it's with your previous employers, not us. That's on the other side of the fence, the people that you worked for before. He said, them, not us, Jimmy. He said, I give you my word on that. After I talked to the certain parties in Chicago, down in the city, about them trying to kill me, and he's telling me that was my previous employers, what we're talking about here, we're talking about a government agency. I won't say which agency it was that tried to take me out, but I know at that time I had people in the DOD on me because I had taken certain material off the computer at Oxford from the arsenal, so I worked in the office. I had an excess classified material there for building new tanks, new helicopters, everything. I had the gun emplacements off one of the Black Hawk helicopters. I had the allocations for everything. I had the rate of firing, anything that's classified, because we made a lot of the stuff there. We made the nitrine cable to fire the Sidewinder missile inside a federal prison. Okay. Anyway, the second attempt was, well, now I've realized this here is not the crime family after me. It's got to be a government agency. The second attempt on my life was, late at night, they ran me over on my motorcycle. They hit me so hard, they bent the frame on it. They totaled the motorcycle out. That's all on record. Next time I come around, the third time, with these 2 off-duty officers. One of them is David Ostertag. They will never admit they had a contract on my life, and I want to stay with them. I got no hard feelings against either one of these officers, even though they tried to kill me. I don't take this anything personal. I take it they were doing a job. They were doing what they was paid to do. They just blew it. But the thing is this, I'm here because somebody opened up on my partner and me. They tried to kill us in broad daylight on May 7th, 1991, 3:15 p.m., maybe 3:30, in the middle of Route 12 in a little place called Buffalo Grove. We're between Quinton Road and Long Grove Road on Route 12. They forced us off the road. When they forced us off the road, they say it was a high-speed chase. It really wasn't a high-speed chase. They spotted me at a gas station. I didn't even see them. I paid for the gas, got in the car. My partner, David Morley, he was driving. As we pulled out from there, they got in behind us. They got up alongside of us. He started hit the gas to go. And I told him, "Now hold it, pull it over. We don't run from nobody." And my exact was, "We don't run, pull it over. We'll deal with it." They cut us off like he pulled into like a part of a driveway. It was gravel, a little fast. He hit the brakes. We slid into a little tree. The tree we hit wasn't any bigger than my arm. I threw the door open on the right-hand side to exit the car. This was a leased car. As I threw the door open to exit, they drove their car, which is a white unmarked car, into the side of our car. When I seen the front of the car coming at the door, I jerked my leg back up off the ground so I wouldn't get it cut off and they were broken, and dug my head, and when they hit the door hit me and knocked me back into the car. I bounced off the dash, and at that point, they opened fire. My partner, David Morley, very good man. He saved my life on several occasions in the free world. His left hand is paralyzed. He'd been shot up a couple times before in shootouts. He can't use his left hand. At this point, he's leaning down, fumbling under the seat of the car, looking for his gun, looking for a 9mm. And I'm yelling, "Get out, get out, get out." And to me, it seemed like it's taking forever. When he got the 9, he put it up under his arm. He's got to close his arm, reach across, open the door to exit. This is only a few seconds, but it seemed like a lifetime to me. We come out of the car. When he come out, he took the first shot. David Ostertag went down. At this point, when I come out, there was no need for me to even shoot. The other officer, Bittner, I didn't know they were cops at that time, neither did my partner. We had no idea they were police officers. He crawled up under the car, and he was screaming, I guess, "They're going to kill us both, they're going to kill us both." David Ostertag was already down. I grabbed the AK-47 out of the car, had it in the back seat. I'd went and picked that up out of the storage shed. The simple reason, I'd had a meeting prior to those people, and somebody had poked me in the chest, and I just knocked them down and stomped on them a couple times and told them, "Don't ever threaten me to tell me you're going to trunk me. If you do it first, and then come and tell me that you done it." I went and told David, I said, "We got problems." I went and got the AK-47 out, got the ammo can out. I had a 30-round clip in the AK-47. This is all in the law books. The ammo can had 520 rounds of ammo in it. David Ostertag can tell you how many rounds we had for the 9mm, the clips, all the loose rounds. I went into a little swamp. Took them several hours to get me out. The AK-47 tractor spring, it broke, it wouldn't fire. A lot of people around, a lot of people. We had traffic backed up from the shooting incident there all the way to Wisconsin and all the way to the city of Chicago.
So if who opened fire first?
They opened fire first.
And they're in an unmarked car?
Unmarked car.
Plain clothes?
Plain clothes. They had a windbreaker on. They were wearing a badge on their gun belt underneath the windbreaker jacket, sitting in a car. They were shooting from inside the car. David Ostertag had exited, coming around shooting when David Morley dropped him.
Did they ever say you were under arrest, or?
No.
Did they identify, did they yell police officers?
Nobody identified nothing. I mean, the shooting started.
How many shots were fired before your partner took the shot?
Well, I'm going to say they got off probably the first 14 shots. They say they fired 3 and 11 out of 52. They said we fired the rest of them. But there's not that many shell casings on hand. And if the only weapons that were fired were 9mm that day, and my weapon hadn't been fired, that leaves 3 clips. It's only 45 rounds and 15 rounds to 9mm in a staggered clip. And they didn't fire that many. They still had rounds in theirs. So there's no way 52 rounds were fired that day. Oh, there's all kind of witnesses that seen what went down. There's witnesses that will plainly state on who got out, who shot who, and who shot first. That's all in the court documents.
So how they get a conviction if there were witnesses to say they fired first?
That was very simple. We were tried in Lake County, Illinois. It didn't take them long to convict us. Everybody on the jury was related to a cop. You don't shoot a cop and walk away. You shoot a cop, it don't matter if it's self-defense or not. I had witnesses that come there to testify on my behalf, and that was irrelevant, and they were not permitted to testify. My own aunt was not permitted to testify at my trial. As far as I'm concerned, it was a frame. That bill was self-defense, over and out. And I didn't even shoot nobody.
What has changed in your life in recent years?
I think probably the biggest change in my life is, and let me go back just a little bit farther. Before this change took place, I had no emotions or no feelings, basically speaking, for anyone at all. My family never came first. The agency came first, crime family came first. Everybody was always ahead of my wife and my kids. Wrong, I know that. I know that now. I've got probably a lot of regrets, maybe some remorse for a lot of the things that I did do. I'm sorry at times I wasn't there to see my kids go to their little school plays or do their dances, recitals, or whatever. I'm sorry I wasn't there for their birthdays, for a lot of their Christmases. But those things are part of my life growing up. These are things that I accepted because to me, other things were more important. My family, my wife, my kids, they were way down on the list of priorities. Wrong, I know.
Are you remorseful about shooting Kennedy?
For many years, no, I wasn't. But as the time goes by, I'm not saying remorseful for shooting Kennedy. Maybe I'm more remorseful for how it affected this country and for the things it's done. Maybe John F. Kennedy did do some good things for this country. I'm not really sure. But I got a lot of remorse for a lot of things that I've done. But that's for the simple reason I've got my life turned around a little bit. So I can't be as hard as I used to be. I try to have a lot of compassion for my fellow man. But for John F. Kennedy, got to be honest, yeah, let's say I got a little remorse there for him because not specifically maybe him, but like for his family, for the kids and all. But at the time when we acted, I felt that I was right in what we were doing.
Why did you dislike the man?
I disliked Kennedy. The reason you got to understand, I didn't like Kennedy for one reason. I didn't know the man personally, never met the man, never seen him in person as far as I know. The whole thing was, I was heavily involved in training for the Bay of Pigs. I didn't go with them. I wasn't on the shoulder. I wasn't a soldier. I didn't go there and fight. I never fired a shot. I trained them in setting up demolitions, making bombs, weapons, ambushes, we call them MAs, mechanical ambushes, firing weapons, trained them in weapons trade, and some hand-to-hand combat. What I did wasn't all that important, but you get to know guys. You work with them all day. You're out there at the fire of the night. You sleep out there in the wilderness. You know, you live together for a while. They get trained. They go away. If I'd have had my choice, I'd have went with them. Luckily, I didn't. But when they went there and they got slaughtered, got arrested, put in prison all their lives, tortured, killed, it was a mess. All because Kennedy, and we had all kind of firepower sitting out there waiting. We got to have some good airplanes there. They shafted them bad. Kennedy wouldn't do it. He got scared. He wouldn't go for it. When I say Kennedy got scared, he was scared of Khrushchev, Russia and them. But the whole thing was this. That's one of those things. They called it off. It was a no-go. They had no support. They went in. They got their ass shot off.
So you felt like Kennedy had betrayed him?
Oh, Kennedy betrayed. I felt like he really betrayed me, even though he didn't even know who I was. But he betrayed the operation itself. And this was a government-sanctioned operation without a doubt. And when this happened, and then later I found out that a lot of the people that we had trained that were supposed to have been there, they were put on I want to call it a banana boat, like a freighter. And these people, they were trucked around. There's several hundred men on this freighter. And they're giving them like a 5-day joyride around the Gulf of Mexico instead of taking them over there to fight. And these guys, these Cubans, I mean, they were dedicated. They were dedicated where these were, well, when you get down to it, what's a patriot, what's a terrorist? The Cuban that have been terrorists, that's the patriots, okay? A patriot and a terrorist, the only difference is what side of the fence you're on. Everybody's fighting for what they believe in. But these Cubans, they were fighters. They wanted to go. And they were very, very upset with the agency and a lot of other people because they didn't make the scene. At the time, I believe the Kennedy assassination was a necessity. The reason it was carried out, the reason it was ordered, in my own belief is the money people, the power people, they wanted to stay in Southeast Asia. It's not about who did who to what over here. It was about the money that was to be made. John F. Kennedy wanted to bring all the boys home from Southeast Asia that were over there. Certain people wanted to keep those guys over there. We needed it because there's going to be deep seaports built. There's going to be the biggest runways in the world built for bombers in different places, in Guam, Okinawa. Southeast Asia is going to be flooded with air bases. We're not talking millions, and we were talking maybe $1 trillion or more. You've got your chemical companies that's going to come in. This is the greatest ground there ever was for chemical warfare testing. And to have a war, you need deep sea ports, you need runways, airplanes. manufactures tanks, weaponry, ammunition, munitions to be made, bombs to be made. We're talking an all-time economics deal here. Big money. Sad to say, the rich get rich, the poor get poor. The poor die, the rich got richer.